The room applauded when my father said my brother had built Bennett Commercial Millwork, not helped build it, not brought in business, built it. Ryan sat at the head table with one hand over his heart, wearing the expression people use when receiving an award they practiced being surprised by. Behind him, 30 years of company photographs moved across a screen. Ryan shaking hands, Ryan cutting ribbons, Ryan standing in front of work I had priced, scheduled, corrected, and occasionally delivered myself in a truck that smelled like wet, moving blankets. My father smiled into the microphone. I'd like the original team to stand with the two men who made this company what it is. A chair scraped near the back. Luis Ortega rose slowly, buttoned his old brown jacket, and walked toward us. He passed my father. He passed Ryan. Then he stopped behind my chair. Marlene stood next. Then Denny Walsh. Then Calvin Price with his cane and his oxygen machine bumping against the tablecloth. One by one, the people I had spent weeks tracking down came forward and formed a crooked line behind me. Nobody clapped this time. My father lowered the microphone. What is this? Luis looked at him, then rested one scarred hand on the back of my chair. You asked the builders to stand, Frank. 6 weeks earlier, I was lying on my stomach beneath a conference table, trying to discover why a drawer wouldn't close. This was not technically my job. My job, according to my email signature, was Director of Operations. That title sounded like I spent my days examining charts in a glass office. In reality, it meant that if a client in Dayton called at 7:45 on a Monday morning because the executive conference room we had installed over the weekend had a crooked drawer, I drove to Dayton with a drill, a laser level, and the emergency sewing kit my mother gave me for Christmas in 2017. The sewing kit was for splinters. Is it serious? Asked the facilities manager. Her name was Beth. She was standing above me in pointed shoes that clicked every time she shifted her weight. Beth whispered in conference rooms even when nobody else was present, as if a merger might be sleeping nearby. No, I said. It's a loose slide. We have the regional vice presidents coming at noon. Then it's still a loose slide, but with an audience. She laughed too loudly, then looked guilty about it. My phone vibrated against the carpet near my elbow. Ryan. I let it buzz while I tightened the screw. It stopped, then immediately started again. Beth crouched until her face appeared sideways beyond the table edge. Do you need to get that? If the building is on fire, he'll text. The phone stopped. A text appeared. Call me. Building not on fire yet. I finished the drawer, opened and closed it 3 times, then made Beth do it herself. People trusted a repair more if they got to test it. She slid the drawer shut and smiled with actual relief. Oh, that's perfect. It was almost perfect before. Almost perfect is terrible in a boardroom. That should be embroidered on a pillow. I signed the completion form, packed my tools, and called Ryan from the parking garage. He answered with, You love me. No. You're going to, though. I'm in Dayton. I know. How's Beth? This was one of Ryan's gifts. He remembered clients' names, spouses' names, golf handicaps, food allergies, and the fact that Beth's older sister lived in Denver. He could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 3 dinner invitations. He could not remember where we stored the current labor rate sheet. She's delighted, I said. What did you sell? Why do you always assume I sold something? Because you never call twice unless you sold something we can't make. We can make it. What is it? A reception desk. We make reception desks. For St. Vincent's new outpatient center. I stopped beside my car without unlocking it. That bid closes next month. It closed early. No, it didn't. They loved the concept. Ryan. There was a pause. I heard voices behind him, then a door shut. Okay, he said. The formal bid closes next month, but they want a mock-up for their donor walkthrough on Friday. This Friday? I knew you'd focus on the least exciting part. Today is Monday, which gives us 4 entire days. It gives us 3 production days and a Thursday night panic attack. The design is clean. Curved front, ribbed walnut, stone transaction top. I closed my eyes. We don't do curved ribbing in-house. Not usually. We don't have the veneer. Calvin's supplier might. Calvin retired 9 years ago, but you have his number. There it was. The little turn in the conversation where Ryan placed the problem in my hands and made it sound like a compliment. I leaned against the car. Did you promise them Friday? I said we'd make every effort. In Ryan English or regular English? He laughed. Come on, Claire. This could get us the whole package. They already invited us to bid on the whole package. Invited isn't the same as wanted. That was also true. Ryan's worst habit was attaching sensible arguments to reckless decisions. I'll call Vince at Great Lakes Veneer, I said. Not Calvin. Calvin is allowed to be retired. You're the best. I'm not promising Friday. I never said you were. You told them we'd make every effort. We will. No, I will. You'll wear a blue jacket and point at it. My blue jacket gets results. I hung up while he was still laughing. At the shop, the afternoon shift had started, and the warehouse smelled like sawdust, coffee, and the sharp, sweet glue we used for laminate. Somebody had put a paper birthday crown on the bust of Elvis that sat above the tool cage. Nobody knew where Elvis came from. He'd been there longer than half the employees and had once disappeared for 2 weeks during a feud between finishing and assembly. I found my father on the production floor staring at a set of shop drawings. Frank Bennett had been telling people he was semi-retired for 5 years. His version of retirement involved arriving at 6 in the morning, moving other people's tools, and asking why nobody made anything by hand anymore while standing beside a computerized router he had personally approved purchasing. He looked up. How bad was Dayton? Loose slide. I told them not to use that imported hardware. It's made in Indiana, imported from Indiana. He returned to the drawings. At 67, Dad still had the shoulders of the man who had carried cabinets up narrow staircases because he couldn't afford enough installers. His hair had gone almost white, but he wore it in the same severe side part from every photograph of my childhood. He could make generosity feel like discipline. When one of our finishers had a heart attack, Dad paid his rent for 3 months and threatened to fire anyone who mentioned it. When I was sick, he left soup outside my apartment door, rang the bell, and drove away before I could thank him. Ryan sold St. Vincent's a mock-up, I said. Dad grunted. Good. For Friday. That made him look up again. This Friday? Yes. Can we do it? Not without moving the Ashland bank run and paying overtime. The bank can wait. The bank cannot wait. Their opening is next Tuesday. He tapped the drawings against his palm. Figure it out. I gave him a long look. What? He said. Nothing. You've got that face. This is just my face. No, your regular face is friendlier. From behind us, Thomas called. Not by much. Dad pointed the rolled drawings at him. You got time for comedy? You got time to clean around that edge-bander? Thomas grinned and vanished behind a stack of panels. Dad handed me the drawings. They were for a nurse's station Ryan had sold the month before. A red circle marked a gap between 2 panels. Install crew says the field dimension was wrong, Dad said. Who took it? Ryan. Of course. Have they cut the replacement? They're waiting on you? Why? Dad frowned as if I had asked why water was wet. Because you know how to fix it. By 6:30, I had the St. Vincent's mock-up scheduled, the Ashland Bank moved to the evening shift without delaying shipment, and the nurse's station replacement recut from stock we'd been saving for another job. Ryan arrived carrying 2 pizza boxes and the pleased expression of a man returning from war with medicine. Pepperoni and mushroom, he announced. Whose card? Mine. Company or personal? He set the boxes on my desk. Why do you hate joy? He had loosened his tie and rolled his sleeves with mathematical precision. At 41, he still looked like the college baseball player he had briefly been, before a shoulder injury and an intense dislike of practice ended that chapter. People assumed I was younger because I was shorter, and because women apparently became invisible instead of aging. Ryan opened the first box. 3 slices were missing. You ate in the car? I had to test it. You tested 3 pieces? Quality control. I took one anyway. For 10 minutes, we sat in my office eating over a stack of production reports. Ryan told me about the St. Vincent's meeting, doing impressions of the architect and the donor committee chairman. He was funny. That was part of the problem. Being angry at Ryan was like trying to stay angry at a Labrador that had learned to use your credit card. When he finished, he wiped his hands and leaned back. "Dad tell you about the anniversary?" He mentioned dinner. Not dinner, an event. I kept chewing. "He wants to rent the ballroom at the Franklin," Ryan said. "Clients, current staff, former staff, the whole 30-year victory lap. Our 10th anniversary was submarine sandwiches in the loading dock. We've grown. Our 20th was better sandwiches." Ryan reached for another slice. "Mom wants centerpieces. Then we're doomed." She has a theme. "We're deeply doomed." He smiled, but something in his face stayed cautious. "What?" I asked. "Dad wants you to organize it." I laughed once. "No." "He says you know everybody." "I know everybody because I work with them. You're organized. That isn't the compliment this family thinks it is." "Claire." "No." "Hire an event planner." "He doesn't trust event planners. He's never met one." "Exactly." The following Sunday, my mother served pot roast at 2 in the afternoon because she believed eating dinner after 5 was how families drifted apart. Dad carved. Ryan poured wine. I carried serving dishes from the kitchen while Mom corrected where I placed them. "The carrots go near your father," she said. "Do they have unfinished business? He likes carrots. He can reach 18 inches. Mom moved them herself. Diane Bennett was small, elegant, and capable of holding a grudge against a grocery store for rearranging the cereal aisle. She kissed my cheek every time I entered her house and examined my face immediately afterward, as if affection were also a diagnostic procedure. "You look tired," she said. "I'm 44. That isn't what I said. At the table, Dad described his anniversary plans between bites. He wanted the original sign from the rented warehouse displayed near the entrance. He wanted photographs arranged by decade. He wanted Luis, Marlene, Calvin, and all those old lunatics invited. He wanted a film about the company's history, though he called it a film because the word video sounded cheap. "And Ryan will be the focus," Dad said. "The story of how he built us from a small family shop into what we are now." My fork stopped against my plate. Ryan looked at his wine. Dad kept carving a piece of meat he had already cut. That's the story people care about. Father starts it, son takes it forward. Mom touched my wrist lightly, not to comfort me, to keep me still. Dad finally looked up. "You'll make it good, Claire." There were 4 adults at that table who knew he had just asked me to erase myself. 3 of us waited to see whether I would do it. I put my fork down. "No," I said. Dad blinked. "No what?" "No, I won't make a film about Ryan building the company." Ryan rubbed his thumb along the stem of his wine glass. Mom released my wrist and reached for her napkin. Dad leaned back. "That's not what I asked. It's exactly what you asked. I asked you to organize an anniversary dinner with a specific story, a true story. The company had 48 employees before Ryan landed his first major account. He grew into the role. So did everybody. That's what 30 years is." Dad's mouth tightened. He hated arguments that required more than one sentence because he considered follow-up points a form of cheating. "Your brother brought us the hospital work," he said. "I priced the first 3 hospital jobs, and Ryan sold them, after I found the bids. Because that was your responsibility, and apparently his was building the company." Mom lifted the gravy boat even though nobody had asked for it. "Can we not turn this into an audit?" "I'm not auditing anything. You're picking apart your father's words," she said. "They're sturdy words. They can take it." Ryan looked at me then, a quick warning glance that managed to be both apologetic and annoyed. That was his specialty with me. He could say, "I know you're right, and please stop being right," with the same movement of his eyebrows. Dad set his knife beside his plate. "This is supposed to celebrate what we accomplished." "We?" "You know what I mean. I did." That was the trouble. For as long as I could remember, Dad used we when something needed to be carried, and he when somebody was handing out credit. Mom used family when she wanted agreement, and Claire when she wanted labor. I'll get quotes from event planners, I said. I'll make a guest list and pull photographs. I'm not writing a fairy tale. Dad snorted. Nobody asked you to. Mom smiled with visible relief. Good. Then that's settled. It wasn't settled, but in our family, the person who stopped objecting first was considered to have agreed. After dinner, Ryan disappeared with Dad to look at a gutter that had been acting strange, leaving me in the kitchen with Mom and 30 years of decorative plates she refused to put in the dishwasher. I dried while she washed. The window over the sink looked onto a patio Dad had rebuilt twice, because the first version had drained water toward the house, and the second had reminded him of the first. Mom kept her eyes on a serving bowl. Your father isn't trying to hurt you. I didn't say he was. You didn't have to. What is he trying to do? Honor Ryan? Why does honoring Ryan require editing me out? She turned off the water and stood with both hands gripping the sink. You know your brother, she said. He needs encouragement. He's 41. That doesn't mean he stops being human. I didn't say don't encourage him. Buy him a cake. Name a sandwich after him. Just don't tell a ballroom full of people he did my work. Mom resumed washing. You've always been more secure. I laughed because it came out before I could stop it. What? Nothing. No, say it. You and Dad keep describing me as secure when what you mean is useful. That's unfair. Is it? She handed me a wet platter with enough force to splash my sweater. We relied on you, she said. I'm sorry if that felt like punishment. There was real hurt in her voice. That was what made talking to Mom difficult. She could turn your wound until it faced her. I dried the platter slowly. It didn't always, I said. The back door opened and Ryan stepped inside carrying a rusted section of downspout like evidence from a murder. Dad says this is why the basement smells weird. The basement smells weird because it's a basement, Mom said. He looked between us. Did I interrupt something? Yes, I said. No, Mom said at the same time. Ryan set the downspout on her clean counter. She gasped. Not there. He snatched it up. See? This is why I need encouragement. I had to bite the inside of my cheek. On the drive home, my phone rang through the car speakers. You're following me, I said. Ryan's voice filled the car. We live in the same direction. You turned into my neighborhood. I wanted to make sure you got home. I've been driving since 1998. You're mad. I'm tired. You can be both. You're a talented woman. I stopped at a red light. His headlights waited behind me, too close as usual. Did you know what Dad was planning to say? Not exactly. That's Ryan for yes. I knew he wanted the event to focus on the growth years. All 30 years were growth years. Sometimes we grew debt. I didn't write the phrase. You also didn't object. He was quiet long enough that the light changed. I don't know what you want me to do, he said. It sounded honest. That irritated me more than a lie would have. You could start by not sitting there like a kidnapped prince while Dad tells me to plan your coronation. Coronation? There are centerpieces. Mom has gone too far. Good night, Ryan. Claire, wait. I ended the call and watched his car continue past my street instead of turning behind me. He had never been checking that I got home. He just hadn't wanted to have the conversation face to face. By 8 the next morning, a white binder sat in the center of my desk. Anniversary was written across the cover in Dad's block printing. He had made tabs. Dad did not use tabs. I opened it with the caution of someone handling an object found beside a body. Venue, guests, history, entertainment, legacy. Inside the history section was a yellow legal pad page covered with his handwriting. 1986, first shop. 1994, moved to Benton Road. 2001, Ryan joins full-time. 2004, first hospital contract. 2010, expansion. 2018, Ryan brings in $10 million year. At the bottom, beneath a thick line, he had written, Claire, employees/family support. I stared at the word support, until the letters began looking fake. My office door opened, and Dad came in without knocking. He was carrying 2 coffees. He set one in front of me. "Peace offering," he said. "You don't know how I take my coffee. Black." "Since when?" He looked offended. "Since always." I took a sip. It was black, and it was from the gas station on the corner, which roasted its beans over an open tire fire. Dad pointed at the binder. I got started. I noticed. I called the Franklin. "October 12th is open. That's 6 weeks away. Plenty of time. For a prison transfer, maybe. They need a deposit. I'll have accounting send it." He nodded, then lingered near the door. It was unlike Dad to linger. He entered rooms with a purpose and left the moment the purpose had been accomplished, sometimes while the other person was still talking. Finally, he said, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." "Which part?" "You and Ryan have different strengths." "I know. He's the face of the company." "I know. You're good with details. I run operations for a company with 116 employees." "Exactly. Details." I closed the binder. Dad shifted his weight. For half a second, he looked older than he had at dinner. Not frail, just uncertain. I almost softened. Then he tapped the legacy divider. I put some thoughts in there about the future. We'll discuss them after the event. Before I could ask what that meant, Thomas appeared behind him. "Claire, Vince is here with veneer samples, and he looks like he wants to kill somebody." Dad brightened. Other people's practical emergencies restored his faith in the world. "Handle that," he said, and left. Vince Morales stood at the receiving bay beside 6 sheets of flexible walnut veneer and a delivery van with one rear door tied shut using an orange extension cord. He had supplied material to Bennett since before I joined full-time and treated every rush order as a personal insult to forestry. "You people know trees have to grow first, right?" he asked. "I've heard rumors." He ran a hand over the top sheet. "This is everything I could get with a consistent grain. It's beautiful. It's expensive. Less beautiful. And if your brother calls me one more time to ask whether wood can be expedited, I'm blocking him. I support that." Ryan came through the bay wearing safety glasses he did not need and carrying a box of pastries. "Vince," he said warmly, "you saved us." Vince pointed at me. "She saved you. I just had inventory." Ryan held out the box. "Apple fritter? I'm still blocking you." He took 2. We spent the rest of the day working through the mock-up. Ryan surprised me by staying on the floor. He held sections while Thomas fitted the curved ribs, swept sawdust without being asked, and drove out to retrieve the stone sample after the courier went to the wrong address. He was terrible with the forklift and nearly backed into Elvis, but he caught the bust against his chest and apologized to it. At 7, he found me checking the rib spacing with a steel ruler. "You know, nobody can see a 1/16 of an inch," he said. "I can. Nobody important." He crouched beside me. There was sawdust in his hair and a smear of pencil along his jaw. For a moment, he looked 23 again, back when we stayed late together because Dad couldn't afford anyone else. "You remember the Kroger pharmacy job?" he asked. "The purple counters? They were supposed to be blue. You ordered the wrong laminate. The sample said indigo. It was grape. You cried. I had been awake for 36 hours. I thought Dad was going to kill me. He yelled at me. I know." The lightness went out of his face. "I know," he repeated. I put the ruler down. From the finishing room, Thomas shouted that he needed Ryan to help turn the desk section. Ryan stood, then paused. "For what it's worth," he said, "I don't think your support." It was exactly the kind of sentence Ryan offered when he wanted credit for understanding a problem without having to change his behavior. "What do you think I am?" He opened his mouth. "Thomas is waiting," I said. He left without answering. The mock-up went out Friday morning and won over the St. Vincent's committee. Ryan sent the entire company an email praising our incredible Bennett team. My name did not appear, but neither did his, which was how he convinced himself he had been generous. That afternoon, I began sorting photographs in the storage room. Dust coated the banker boxes beneath the old estimating files. I found ribbon cuttings, Christmas parties, company picnics, installations, retirement dinners, and dozens of pictures of Dad pretending not to enjoy attention. Near the bottom of a box labeled 1997, 2003, I found a photograph of 8 people sitting on the shop floor around a sheet of plywood, balanced on sawhorses. Denny held half a sandwich. Marlene had her shoes off. Luis was raising a paper cup toward the camera. I sat between them in dirty jeans, asleep upright with my head on Luis's shoulder. On the back, in Marlene's handwriting, were the words, Thanksgiving, 2002. Claire stayed. So we stayed. I was still holding it when Dad came in. He glanced at the photograph. "Not that one," he said. "Why? It looks miserable." We were finishing the Westerville hospital, I remember. We delivered 3 days early. Dad reached past me and lifted a photograph of Ryan beside the finished nurse's station. Ryan was clean-shaven, rested, and smiling. "This one," Dad said. "This tells the story better. He took it with him." I looked down at the people on the concrete floor, all of us exhausted enough to mistake endurance for belonging. Then I turned the photograph over and dialed the number I still knew by heart. Luis answered on the 6th ring. Ortega. His voice was rougher than I remembered, but the shape of it was the same. He made his own name sound like a challenge. Luis. Depends who wants him. It's Claire. There was a pause. Claire Bennett? I only know one Luis Ortega. You live a sheltered life. I smiled despite myself. How are you? Old. Suspicious. My left knee predicts rain better than television. Why are you calling me on a Friday afternoon? My father's planning a 30th anniversary event. Frank is still alive? You sent him a Christmas card. I could have been celebrating. I sat on the floor with the photograph balanced against my knee. It's October 12th, I said. At the Franklin. We're inviting former employees. Former employees. That's what we are now? What would you prefer? Survivors. You've been talking to Marlene. I always talk to Marlene. She knows where the bodies are buried. Please don't say that when Dad is around. He'll spend the whole night checking the foundation. Luis laughed, then coughed for several seconds. I waited. What kind of event? He asked. Dinner, photographs, speeches. Mom has centerpieces, God help you. He wants the old team there. He called Denny? I don't know. Calvin? I just started. So Frank wants us there, but you're doing the calling. Yes, sounds familiar. I looked at the boxes around me. There's a picture of us from Thanksgiving, I said. The Westerville job. Jesus, we looked like hostages. You remember? I remember your sandwich had one bite missing for 4 hours. You were watching my sandwich. We were taking bets on whether you'd finish it before sunrise. I fell asleep on you. You drooled on me. I did not. You did. Denny wanted to draw a mustache on your face, but Marlene threatened him with a stapler. I turned the photograph over again. Claire stayed, so we stayed. Will you come? I asked. Luis didn't answer immediately. For you or for Frank? It's the company anniversary. That wasn't my question. I rubbed dust from the corner of the photograph with my thumb. For me, I said. All right then. He gave me his current address and told me not to mail anything because his apartment building had a carrier who folded envelopes like she was angry at paper. I promised to bring the invitation myself. Before we hung up, he said, Claire? Yeah? You still sleeping at that place? Only when the chairs are comfortable. I'm serious. So am I. He made a dissatisfied sound. Bring me the picture. Luis lived in a brick apartment building in Worthington with narrow balconies and identical blue doors. On Sunday morning, I found him at the dining table assembling a model airplane under a magnifying lamp. He had aged in pieces. His hair was completely white, his shoulders narrower, his knuckles swollen. But his mustache remained black, which meant either a medical miracle or drugstore dye. He caught me looking. It's natural, he said. Of course. Carmen used to say it made me look dishonest. How is Carmen? The question escaped before I saw the framed photograph beside his lamp. A black ribbon crossed one corner. Luis set down the tiny wing he was holding. 2 years in March. I didn't know? No reason you would. I'm sorry. He nodded once. Carmen had come to company picnics with aluminum pans of enchiladas and an ability to make Dad accept second helpings after he had loudly refused the first. I searched my memory for an obituary, a card, anything that might prove I had not completely lost track of her. Did Dad know? I asked. Frank came to the funeral. That surprised me. He didn't tell me. He sat in the back, left before the lunch. That sounded exactly like Dad. Luis pushed a mug toward me. The coffee was strong enough to remove paint. I gave him the photograph. He held it beneath the magnifying lamp and smiled. Look at Denny's hair. He had a perm. He said it was natural curl. He also said he was 5'11". He stood on lumber in every group picture. Luis studied the image longer. We were stupid. We were working. Same thing sometimes. I sat across from him. You were 21, he said. 22. Too young to look that tired. So were you. I was 38. I was old enough to know better. Dad said if we missed that delivery, the hospital wouldn't pay until January. We couldn't cover payroll. I remember why. We did what we had to do. Luis placed the photograph between us. That sentence caused a lot of divorces in that shop. The comment landed harder because he did not say it cruelly. We paid everyone overtime, I said. Eventually. By Tuesday. And you worked more hours than any of us without paying yourself at all. I know. His acknowledgement felt good for half a second, then suspicious. What aren't you saying? Luis leaned back. You called me at home on Thanksgiving morning and told me the crew wouldn't stay unless I stayed. I told Carmen I had no choice. I didn't know you told her that. You didn't ask. You could have said no, so could you? I looked toward the balcony. A squirrel was standing on the railing, watching us with professional interest. Luis sighed. I'm not trying to beat you up. You're doing a decent impression. You asked me to remember. I'm remembering. I asked you to come to dinner. You brought the picture. He was right, which was an irritating habit he had preserved beautifully. I folded my hands around the mug. Dad doesn't want to use it, I said, because he looks bad. He isn't in it. That's worse. He picked a picture of Ryan with the finished nurse's station. Luis rolled his eyes. Ryan came for the photograph. He helped with delivery. He showed up after lunch. He brought coffee. He brought 12 coffees for 26 people. He was 20. He was charming. He's still charming. Some conditions don't improve. I smiled, and Luis did too. He worked, I said. Later, I mean. I know. He brought money into the place. Could sell a screen door to a submarine. You make that sound like a compliment. It is one. Submarines are tough customers. I watched him align the paper photograph with the edge of the table. Dad says Ryan built the company. Luis looked up. He says I supported the family. And what does Ryan say? Nothing, mostly. Then he's saying yes. The event planner Mom chose was named Rebecca Shaw and wore red-framed glasses that made every sentence sound like a decision. She met us in the ballroom at the Franklin with fabric samples, floor plans, and the kind of patience normally reserved for people recovering from head injuries. Mom wanted tall flower arrangements. Rebecca explained that tall arrangements blocked sight lines. Mom said people could lean. Dad wanted a stage large enough to display the original shop sign, a podium, and a full-size sample nurse's station. Rebecca asked why anyone would want a nurse's station at dinner. It shows what we do, Dad said. We make more than nurses' stations, I said. It photographs well. It weighs 900 pounds. Ryan wandered to the center of the empty dance floor and clapped once to test the acoustics. The sound bounced around the chandeliers. We could hang the old sign behind the stage, he said. Rebecca wrote that down, and the historical film will play before or after dinner. Before speeches, Dad said. After, Mom said. People don't pay attention when they're hungry. People don't pay attention after 2 glasses of wine, Ryan said. You won't serve 2 glasses, Mom told him. I'm 41. And I know you. Rebecca turned to me. What do you think? 4 Bennett heads swung in my direction. After dinner, I said. Before speeches, keep it under 8 minutes. Dad frowned. 8? People don't want a documentary. It's 30 years. Then put the other 22 minutes online. Rebecca looked relieved. 8 is ideal. We'll need interview subjects. Me, Dad said. Ryan, a few clients. And employees, I said. Current or former? Rebecca asked. Both. Dad shook his head. Too many voices muddy the story. The employees are the story. The company is the story. A company is employees. It's also leadership, Ryan said carefully. I turned to him. He lifted both hands. I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying there needs to be a narrative. There is a narrative. Dad started the company. People built it. Dad pointed at him as if Ryan had just won a debate. Exactly. Leadership. Rebecca examined her floor plan with profound interest. I walked away before I said something that would make Mom schedule a second meal to repair the first. At the far end of the ballroom, the windows overlooked downtown Columbus. From 30 floors up, traffic looked calm because you couldn't see anyone changing lanes without signaling. Ryan joined me. You know I meant everybody, he said. I do. Then why are you angry? Because you meant everybody while Dad meant you, and you let him borrow your sentence. That's not fair. You should put that on the invitation. It's becoming our family motto. He leaned against the window frame. I talked to Dad. About what? Making sure you're featured in the film. Featured as what? Claire. That's not a job. You know what I mean. I looked at him. He rubbed the back of his neck. Operations. The team. Keeping things running. Support. I didn't say that. You don't have to. There's a binder. His eyes narrowed. What binder? The anniversary binder Dad made. He made a binder? With tabs? Okay, that's terrifying. Despite myself, I laughed. Ryan smiled, relieved to have found the exit. That was how he survived our conversations. He waited until affection gave him somewhere to run. Back at the shop, I found 3 messages from former employees. Luis had apparently begun calling people before I left his apartment. Denny wanted to know whether spouses were invited. Calvin asked if the Franklin had stairs. Marlene did not leave a message. She simply appeared in reception the next afternoon wearing a green raincoat and carrying a bakery box tied with string. At 70, she still walked like she was late to correct someone. She looked me up and down. You got skinny, she said. You got polite. I brought cookies. That does soften it. She shoved the box into my hands. Luis says Frank is rewriting history. Luis is dramatic. Luis builds model airplanes and argues with squirrels. It's all he has. She glanced toward Dad's office. Is he here? Yes. Good. I brought the lemon ones he hates. She followed me into my office, sat without being invited, and opened the anniversary binder. She moved through the sections quickly until she reached history. Her mouth tightened at Ryan's name. Then she looked at me. You're letting him do this? I'm organizing a dinner. That's what you called it in 2006 when Frank blamed me for missing the insurance payment. The air changed. That was 18 years ago. Yes, I've had time to phrase it correctly. I fixed it. You paid the penalty. You didn't tell the office who forgot to sign the check. Dad had forgotten. I had found the envelope under a stack of catalogs on his desk. He was under a lot of pressure, I said, and heard my mother in my own voice. Marlene's expression softened, which somehow made it worse. So were you, she said. That never stopped him from letting you take a hit. She closed the binder. I'll come to the anniversary, but don't invite us so we can clap for the cleaned-up version. After she left, Dad called me into his office and shut the door. Ryan was already there. Dad gestured toward the chair across from his desk. Sit down. We need to discuss what happens after the anniversary. I looked at Ryan. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Dad folded his hands. I'm naming your brother president, he said, and I need you to stay exactly where you are and keep him pointed in the right direction. For a moment, the only sound in Dad's office was the wall clock ticking over the filing cabinet. It was shaped like a saw blade. A supplier had given it to him in 1999, and it had always run 3 minutes fast because Dad believed punctuality could be achieved through deception. "What does exactly where I am mean?" I asked. Dad glanced at Ryan as if the answer might be sitting on his shirt. "Operations," he said. "You keep doing what you're doing, and keep him pointed in the right direction. That's not an insult. I'm trying to understand the structure. Ryan becomes president. I'll remain chief executive during the transition. You run the internal side. I already run the internal side. Then nothing changes for you." He said it like that was the gift. I looked at Ryan. He was studying his hands. "What responsibilities are you giving up?" I asked Dad. "The day-to-day." "Which day-to-day?" "Claire, don't turn this into one of your interrogations. It's an organizational question. I'll step back from client approvals, personnel decisions, and major purchasing, all things that currently come through me. That's why you're so important. Does my title change?" Dad's eyebrows drew together. "Why would it? Does my salary? We review salaries in January. So, no." "We haven't discussed compensation yet. You've discussed the presidency. That's different." "Is it?" Ryan finally looked up. "We can work through the details." "We?" He nodded toward Dad and me, then seemed to realize that made no sense. "All of us." I leaned back. "Is there an ownership change?" Dad's face hardened. "We're not discussing ownership. I'm asking because you're asking me to support a succession plan. The company remains mine." "I know." "Then why are you making it about money?" I asked, about title, salary, authority, and ownership. "You said no to all 4. What exactly am I getting in this plan?" Dad slapped one palm lightly against the desk, not a violent gesture, a period. "You're getting stability. You're getting a family company that continues into the next generation, through Ryan, through both of you, with him as president. Somebody has to be president, apparently." Ryan shifted in his chair. "Claire, nobody's saying your role isn't critical. Critical sounds better than support. It is better. Does it come with the authority to refuse contracts you sell?" He paused. Dad answered for him. "Sales and operations will work together. They currently work together because I spend half my week making impossible things possible." "That's your job," Dad said. There it was again, a simple sentence, clean as a blade. I stood. Dad's expression changed. "We're not finished. When did you decide?" "I've been thinking about it for a long time." I looked at Ryan. "When did you know?" He inhaled slowly. "Dad mentioned it a few months ago." "A few?" "Maybe 3. 3 months." 90 days of coffee, rushed bids, jokes, and conversations in which Ryan had watched me solve problems he knew would soon become his authority and remain my responsibility. "Were you ever going to tell me?" "We're telling you now." "No. Dad is telling me now. You're sitting beside him." Dad pushed back from his desk. "Don't punish your brother because I made a decision. You picked him because you think he built the company. I picked him because he can lead it. What do you think I've been doing?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out fast enough. I left before he found a word that would have to be cleaned up later. Ryan caught me near the tool cage. "Claire." I kept walking. "Would you stop?" "No." He moved in front of me. 2 assemblers nearby became deeply interested in a cart of drawer fronts. "Not here," Ryan said. "You followed me here. Come outside, I have work. So do I. Then this is convenient." His jaw tightened. "I didn't ask him to choose me. You accepted." What was I supposed to say? I stared at him until his shoulders dropped. "Okay," he said. "I knew you'd be upset. You knew I'd be blindsided. I was going to make it fair." "When?" "After." "After you had the title?" "After Dad stopped hovering over every conversation. That could be when he's 90. Ryan glanced toward Dad's office. "I mean it," he said quietly. "Once the transition happens, we can change the structure, give you more authority, adjust compensation, whatever makes sense. You're offering to consider giving me things you need me to continue doing your job. It's not my job yet. Then why have you been keeping his secret?" His face changed. For 1 second, he looked ashamed. Then the defenses came back. "Because every time Dad makes a decision you don't like, you act like I stole something. You did." "What?" "The chance to hear it from my brother." He stepped aside. I went back to my office and closed the door. On my desk, the anniversary binder waited beside the bakery box. Marlene's lemon cookies were lined up in wax paper like small yellow insults. I ate 3. At 4:30, Dad emailed me a draft announcement. It praised Ryan's vision, relationships, and rare instinct for growth. My name appeared in the 4th paragraph. Claire Bennett will continue in her invaluable role directing operations and supporting the company's next chapter. I changed supporting to leading and sent it back. Dad changed it to helping. I closed the document without responding. That evening, Mom called while I was standing in the grocery store comparing 2 brands of laundry detergent that were probably manufactured in the same blue tank. "Your father says you walked out of a meeting. The meeting was over." He says it wasn't. He had announced his decision. He wanted to discuss how everyone would work together. He wanted me to say yes. A woman reached around me for the larger bottle and gave me an apologetic smile. I moved my cart. Mom lowered her voice. "You're not going to leave, are you?" "You knew." It wasn't a question. She took too long to answer. "Your father discussed it with me." "When?" "Claire." "When?" "In the spring." I gripped the cart handle. "Before Ryan knew?" "I don't know exactly when your father spoke to him, but everybody knew except me. We didn't want to upset you until it was finalized. That's generous. I'm not the one who made the decision. No, you just helped store it. Please don't talk to me like I'm one of your employees. I don't hide major changes from my employees." The silence on the line was thick enough to have weight. Finally, she said, "Your brother needs this." I looked at the rows of detergent bottles, all promising brightness, restoration, some improved version of clean. And what do I need? "You've never cared about titles. That's not an answer. You're stronger than Ryan." Mom said it tenderly, as if strength were something she had knitted for me. I left the cart where it was and walked out without buying anything. The next morning, I changed nothing that could be seen. I approved payroll. I met with production. I called the Ashland Bank and confirmed its millwork would arrive Monday. I reviewed the St. Vincent's bid schedule and corrected 2 quantities before estimating sent it out. But when Ryan asked, on his way to a client breakfast, whether there was anything weird about the Riverside Clinic account, I emailed him the current project notes instead of giving him my usual 5-minute summary. At 10:15, he called. "What does pending architect clarification mean?" "It means we're waiting for the architect to clarify something." "Which thing?" "It's in the notes." "I'm driving." "Read them when you stop." "The meeting starts in 10 minutes. "Then you should have asked yesterday." He exhaled. "Claire, come on. Millwork height at the phlebotomy stations. See?" That took 2 seconds. The email took less. I hung up. He went into the meeting without knowing the architect had requested 2 possible pricing options. Nothing catastrophic happened. Nobody lost money. The client asked a question, and Ryan had to say he would check. At noon, he appeared in my doorway. "You made me look unprepared. You were unprepared. You knew what they were going to ask, so did you. It was in the notes." "You always brief me." "Yes." He waited for more. I returned to my screen. "So this is what we're doing?" he asked. "I'm working. You're punishing the company." "No. If I were punishing the company, I would have let estimating bid the wrong number of exam room cabinets." "What?" "Nothing. It's fixed." His eyes moved to the project schedule on my wall, then back to me. "You can't just decide to stop communicating. I communicated in writing. That's not the same, and you know it." He was right. The notes contained the information, but not the judgment. They did not tell him which architect phrase meant possible revision and which meant hold everything. They did not tell him Riverside's facilities director hated being surprised, or that the project manager's short emails meant she was busy, not angry. For years, I had turned 100 details into 3 useful sentences and handed them to Ryan on his way out the door. I had considered that teamwork. Now I wasn't sure. "I'll make you a deal," I said. "You prepare for your meetings and I'll answer specific questions." That's ridiculous. That's how everybody else does it. I'm not everybody else. No, you're the future president. He flinched. I didn't enjoy it as much as I expected. 2 days later, we held our weekly production meeting. 15 people crowded around the scarred conference table while Elvis watched from a shelf near the door. Dad sat at one end, Ryan took the other, a position he had never used before. Normally, I prepared the leadership packet: sales outlook, production constraints, installation risks, receivables, staffing, supplier issues. I gathered the useful parts from conversations across the shop and removed everything that would waste time. That week, I sent Ryan the raw department updates and told him the meeting was his. He arrived with the packet printed but unread. "All right," he said, looking around. "Let's start with sales." I waited, so did everybody else. Ryan flipped through pages. "We've got strong activity." Thomas scratched his beard. "How strong?" "Very." "Do we need the Saturday crew?" Ryan looked at me. I looked at my pen. Dad cleared his throat. "Claire?" "Ryan has the forecast." Ryan found the page. "Potentially." "Potentially this week or potentially this month?" Thomas asked. The installation manager leaned forward. "And are we moving the Lakeside crew to Riverside? The schedule shows both." Ryan turned another page. For 23 uncomfortable minutes, he discovered how many decisions had been made before our meetings ever began. I let him search. I let him ask. I answered when an error could affect someone's schedule or paycheck, but I did not translate his uncertainty into authority. Afterward, Dad followed me into the hallway. "You embarrassed him." I didn't say anything. That was the problem. He had the same reports I have. You know, those reports don't tell the whole story. Then maybe the future president should learn the whole story. Dad glanced through the conference room window. Ryan was still inside, talking with Thomas and taking notes by hand. "He's learning," Dad said. "Good. You don't have to enjoy making it painful." I looked through the glass, too. Ryan listened while Thomas pointed at the schedule. For once, he wasn't charming his way past what he didn't know. "I don't enjoy it," I said. That was almost true. Dad lowered his voice. "Whatever this is between you and me, don't damage your brother to prove a point. I answered every question that affected the work. You let him struggle. Yes. You could have helped. I've helped for 22 years. Dad's face closed. I stepped around him, then stopped. "You didn't promote my brother," I said. "You promoted everything I do for him. I'm just letting you see the difference." Dad stared at me for a long moment. "Leadership means helping people succeed," he said. "Does it?" "Yes." "Then who have you been helping succeed?" The question hit him. I saw it. Then his face settled into the expression he used when a machine made a noise he didn't understand. "You've been angry since Sunday," he said. "I've been angry since 2004. I'm just using complete sentences now." I walked away. Thomas found me near the loading dock 10 minutes later. He carried 2 clipboards and the wary look of a man approaching a dog beside a food bowl. "Can I ask you something? If it's about Saturday crew, yes, we need 4 people. Volunteers only. It's not." He glanced toward the shop floor. "Are you leaving?" The question tightened something under my ribs. "No." "Okay. I mean, I haven't made any decisions. That sounds less okay. I'm not going to let this land on you." He studied me. Thomas had been with us 11 years and had never shown much interest in Bennett family weather as long as it did not delay material. That meeting landed on us, he said. Nothing changed on the schedule. We spent half an hour watching Ryan learn to read. He can read, not those reports. He needs to. I agree. I'm just saying next time, warn me so I can bring a snack. I laughed. Then he tapped one clipboard against the other. You do too much before those meetings. That's a new complaint. It's not a complaint. It's why nobody knows you do it. He handed me the Saturday volunteer sheet and went back inside before I could answer. Rebecca scheduled the anniversary interviews for the following Tuesday. Dad wanted them filmed against a dark backdrop in the ballroom. I wanted the shop, where the company had actually happened. Rebecca solved the argument by explaining that transporting lights and sound equipment twice would cost $1,200. Dad chose the shop. The videographer arrived at 7 in the morning with 2 cameras, 3 cases, and a young assistant who looked alarmed by the amount of airborne dust. His name was Cole Mercer. He wore a knit cap indoors and kept saying beautiful about things no normal person had ever called beautiful. The gouges in the break room table were beautiful. The dent in an old locker was beautiful. Elvis was wildly beautiful. Dad distrusted him immediately. "Don't film the clutter," he said. Cole looked around at a manufacturing floor containing wood, machines, carts, hoses, bins, ladders, and 100 unfinished objects. "Which clutter?" Dad pointed generally. "That." Luis arrived first, wearing a sport coat over a work shirt and carrying the Thanksgiving photograph in a plastic sleeve. He stood just inside the receiving bay, taking in the newer machinery. "You finally replaced the Brant?" he asked. "It caught fire," I said. "I told Frank it would. It caught fire 8 years after you told him. Still counts." Marlene came in behind him with Denny Walsh, who had lost most of his permed hair and gained a hearing aid he kept forgetting to turn on. Calvin arrived 20 minutes late because he had gone to the old building first. "Why'd you move?" he asked. "We moved in 1994, Dad said." Calvin frowned. "Then somebody should have told me." His cane had a brass duck head for a handle. His portable oxygen machine made a low mechanical sigh every few breaths. He caught me watching it. "I'm not dying today," he said. "Dinner's next month." "I wasn't. You've got the same face your father gets around medical equipment." Dad had already disappeared toward the interview setup. The old team wandered through the building, touching workbenches and reading names on office doors. Denny found Elvis and shouted loud enough to overcome his own hearing aid. "You still have this ugly bastard?" "Language," Marlene said automatically. "There are no children here. Then improve for yourself." Luis pointed at a pale mark beneath Elvis's chin. "That's from when Denny dropped him." "I did not. You threw him off the mezzanine. It was a controlled experiment." "What were you testing?" I asked. "Gravity." Ryan arrived carrying coffee for everyone. This time there were enough cups. He greeted each person by name. He remembered Calvin's preferred cream, asked Denny about his fishing boat, and embraced Marlene despite her visible resistance. When he reached Luis, the 2 men shook hands. "Still selling screen doors to submarines?" Luis asked. "Upgraded to skylights. That's my boy, my boy." The word stung even though Luis had probably called every male employee under 50 my boy at some point. Ryan belonged easily wherever he stood. It wasn't always theft. Sometimes people simply opened the door for him before he knocked. Cole interviewed Dad first. We watched from behind the camera as he told the familiar story of renting a building with bad heat, buying used equipment at auction, and landing the company's first bank job by underbidding a competitor who later went bankrupt. "People said I was crazy," Dad told the camera. Marlene whispered, "People were right." Cole asked what changed the business from a small shop into a regional company. Dad smiled. "My son came in," he said. "Ryan had the vision to see where the market was going. Healthcare, commercial expansion. He built relationships, took risks. I knew how to make cabinets. Ryan knew how to build a company. Nobody behind the camera moved." Cole glanced at Rebecca. Rebecca looked at me. I folded my arms. Dad continued for another 3 minutes, then Cole asked, "And your daughter?" "Claire is indispensable." He said it warmly. "What did she bring to the company?" "Discipline, loyalty, support. She keeps the trains running." Luis made a noise in his throat. Cole looked toward him. "Something you'd like to add?" Dad turned in the chair. "He'll have his own interview." "I got something now," Luis said. "Save it." Cole's eyes lit up. Conflict was beautiful, too. Marlene went next. Cole asked her what the early years felt like. Cold, she said. In what sense? In the sense that Frank wouldn't turn up the thermostat. Dad called from off camera. Heat cost money. So did frozen pipes. Cole smiled. Who held things together during the difficult years? Marlene looked directly into the lens. Claire. My face became hot. Dad shifted beside me. Marlene continued. Frank could see the work in front of him. Ryan could see the customer. Claire saw everything between the two. Payroll, deliveries, mistakes, who was about to quit, who was pretending not to be sick. Sometimes she saw too much and thought that meant she got to decide what everyone could survive. I looked at her. Cole leaned forward. What do you mean by that? I mean, she learned from Frank. Dad gave a short laugh. That's supposed to be criticism. Yes, Marlene said. The room went quiet. She described the Westerville hospital installation, not the Noble version. She talked about sleeping 4 hours across 3 nights and driving home with the windows down because cold air was the only thing keeping her awake. She talked about me calling everyone's house until enough people agreed to come in on Thanksgiving. She stayed too, Marlene said. That was how Claire got you. She never asked for something she wasn't willing to do herself. But that doesn't mean the thing was reasonable. Cole asked whether she resented me. Sometimes. Do you now? Marlene considered it. No. Now I wish one of us had told her she didn't have to earn her place by suffering more than everybody else. I turned away. The assistant adjusted a light. Ryan stood near the break room door holding a cardboard tray of untouched coffees. He wasn't smiling. Denny's interview was worse. He told a story about a bank installation in Cincinnati when a shipment arrived damaged. I had kept 6 employees in a motel for 4 extra nights while the shop remade the panels. Denny's wife had been waiting at home for him to sign papers related to their separation. He missed the appointment. I told Claire I needed to leave, he said. I remembered the conversation only after he said it. I had stood beside an ice machine with a project schedule in my hand. What did she say? Cole asked. She said if I left, the other 5 would have to carry me. My stomach turned. Denny shrugged. She wasn't wrong. I was wrong, I said. Everyone looked at me. Denny touched his hearing aid. What? I said I was wrong. Oh. He thought about it. Yeah. Marlene slapped his arm. What? She was. I'm sorry, I said. He nodded. It was a bad marriage anyway. That doesn't make it okay. No. But it makes it less interesting. Cole asked him to repeat part of the story for camera continuity. Denny refused because lunch had arrived. During the break, I escaped to my office and closed the door halfway. Ryan came in carrying a turkey sandwich and set it on my desk. No mustard, he said. I'm not hungry. You always say that, then steal half of mine. I'm evolving. He sat across from me. They love you, he said. That was not what those interviews established. People don't remember that much about someone they don't love. Denny remembers me interfering with his divorce. He remembers you showing up. That isn't always a good thing. Ryan peeled the corner from his sandwich wrapper. You did what Dad needed, he said. I did what the company needed. Same difference back then? No, it wasn't. He looked at me. You think I don't know you carried me? I waited. I know, he said. Maybe not everything, but I know enough. Then say it when he's in the room. His gaze dropped to the sandwich. There it was, the locked door inside him. When filming resumed, Cole interviewed Ryan against a wall of sample doors. He spoke well, of course. He praised Dad's courage, the team's craftsmanship, and the trust clients had placed in Bennett over the years. Then Cole asked who had most shaped his leadership. Ryan looked off camera at Dad. My sister, he said. I stopped breathing for a second. She sees the part nobody else sees, he continued. I've brought in work because I knew Claire could turn the promise into something real. Dad's jaw tightened. It wasn't a full confession. Ryan still made my competence sound like one of his sales tools. But it was more than he had ever said with Dad listening. After the interviews, Dad cornered Cole near the loading dock. "We won't use all of that." Cole zipped a camera into its case. "Of course not. You asked for 8 minutes. I mean, some stories aren't anniversary material." "Which stories?" "The negative ones." Cole glanced at Marlene, who was placing leftover cookies into her purse. "Those are usually the stories people believe." Dad looked at me. "This isn't therapy." "No," I said. "Therapy would have better chairs." His expression didn't move. The old team left slowly, promising to attend the banquet. Louis squeezed my shoulder before he went. Denny asked if the company would reimburse his parking. Calvin stole 2 sandwiches for later and denied it while holding the bag. By the time the shop emptied, the afternoon shift had begun. Ryan was in Dad's office with the door closed. I returned to my desk and found a message from Mid-State Stone confirming that Earl Benton's retirement luncheon was Friday and reminding us that the warehouse would close at noon. I forwarded it to Ryan with a note. "You're scheduled to pick up the Riverside samples at 2. Please coordinate a new time." He replied with a thumbs up. On Friday at 1:45, he called me from the Mid-State parking lot. "The gate's locked." "I know. Nobody's answering." "They're at Earl's retirement lunch." Silence. "You knew? I emailed you. I thought the thumbs up meant you handled it." "You sent the thumbs up. Can you call Earl? He's retiring. The samples are for Monday." "I know." Ryan lowered his voice. "Claire, please." I called our backup supplier, found a comparable stone, and arranged a rush courier. The samples reached Riverside Monday morning. The company paid $480 more than it should have. I did not bury the charge. At Tuesday's expense review, Dad held up the invoice. "What is this?" Ryan answered before I could. "My mistake." Dad looked at me anyway. "You knew Mid-State would be closed," I told him. "You could have followed up." Ryan's face tightened. "Dad, I said it was mine." Dad ignored him. "Why didn't you make sure?" he asked me. "Because a reminder isn't a transfer of responsibility. This is exactly the kind of nonsense I'm talking about. You're so determined to prove Ryan needs you that you're creating failures." I looked across the table at my brother. For once, he looked back. "She didn't create it," Ryan said. Dad's head turned. Ryan swallowed. "I did." The room stayed quiet. It was a tiny thing, an unnecessary courier charge and a missed retirement lunch. But Dad looked more disturbed by Ryan owning the mistake than he had by the mistake itself. That evening, Cole sent the first cut of the anniversary film. It was 7 minutes and 42 seconds long. Marlene's interview was gone. Denny's was gone. Louis appeared for 5 seconds, saying Frank had worked harder than anyone he knew. Ryan spoke for nearly 2 minutes. My interview had been reduced to 1 sentence about how proud I was of the company. Over the closing photograph of Ryan beside the Westerville nurses' station, Dad's voice said, "My son built on what I started and made Bennett the company it is today." I watched the ending twice. Then I noticed the file name, Frank_revised_final. I forwarded the file to Cole with one question: who requested these changes? He answered 9 minutes later. "Frank reviewed with us yesterday. Happy to discuss." Yesterday. Dad had left the shop at 11:30, claiming a dental appointment. I took my laptop into his office and set it on the desk. "You edited the film." He didn't look up from a purchase order. "Cole edited it. At your direction." It was too long. It was 7 minutes and 42 seconds. The interviews wandered. Marlene's whole interview is gone. She talked about insurance payments. She talked about the company. She complained. Denny's gone too. People don't want to hear about his divorce while they're eating prime rib. Then don't use that story. He talked for 40 minutes. Dad signed the order and slid it into his outbox. "The film has a clean structure now. It has your structure. It's my anniversary." I waited. He realized what he had said, but instead of correcting it, he reached for another paper. "The company's anniversary," he said. Cole interviewed 16 people. The final version has more footage of Ryan walking through the warehouse in slow motion than it has of any employee speaking. He represents where we're going. He's opening a drawer. It's a good shot. I turned the laptop toward him and played the closing 30 seconds. Ryan smiled beside the Westerville nurses' station, while Dad's voice gave him the company. When it finished, Dad folded his hands. "What's wrong with it?" "That picture was taken after the job. The crew isn't in it. The crew wasn't available. They were asleep." "Claire, they had worked through Thanksgiving. I was with them." "I know. I was there too. You came in Friday morning. I owned the company. I was always there. You're not in the picture either. That's not the point." "Then what is?" His eyes flashed. "The point is that this evening is about what we built, not every hour everyone thinks they're owed recognition for. I worked 20 years without applause, so now Ryan gets yours and mine. You're making this about yourself. I'm in the story." "Of course you are." "Where?" He pushed back his chair. "You have a sentence." I stared at him. Dad immediately looked away. "A sentence," I repeated. "That's not what I meant." "No, it's exactly what you meant." I picked up the laptop. He said my name as I reached the door. When I turned, the anger had gone out of his face. He looked tired. "I don't know what you want from me," he said. I almost laughed. Ryan had used the same words in the car. The truth. Everybody has their own version. That's convenient when you control the microphone. I left. Ryan watched the film in my office with the blinds closed. He sat forward, elbows on his knees, while his slow-motion self walked past a row of cabinet doors and looked thoughtfully at a clipboard he had not been reading. When it ended, he stayed still. "That shot's a little much," he said. "The drawer? Definitely the drawer." I waited. He rubbed both hands over his face. Did Dad cut all of Luis? Except the part praising him, and Marlene, gone. That's not right. "No, we should put some back. Tell him." Ryan leaned against the chair. "We can ask Cole for a second version." "Tell Dad." "I will. Now." "Claire, he's meeting with the bank. He's in his office, a different bank." I said nothing. Ryan stood. "Fine." Through the blinds, I watched him walk down the hallway. He knocked on Dad's door and went inside. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. Dad pointed once. Ryan paced twice. At one point, both of them turned toward my office. Ryan came back alone. "He'll put Luis back in." "How much?" "The Thanksgiving story. That wasn't in the first version." "No, but Cole has it." "What about Marlene?" "He says it feels bitter." "She is bitter. It's an anniversary film, so only happy people helped?" Ryan sighed. "I got him to change the ending." I looked at him. "He'll add a line about your leadership." "What line?" "We haven't written it yet. I told him the current version gives me too much credit." "How much is too much?" "Claire, I'm trying." "He was?" That was what made it harder to dismiss him. "Tell him what you told Cole," I said, "that your promises became real because of me." "I did." In those words, close. How close? He glanced at the floor. "Ryan." I said operations made our growth possible. Operations. You are operations. I'm also your sister when you need forgiveness. That's not fair. No, it isn't. The new version arrived the next afternoon. Luis appeared for 12 seconds describing the Thanksgiving job. His line ended just before he said, "Claire stayed, so we stayed." Dad's closing narration had changed. My son Ryan expanded our vision, supported by Claire's operational leadership and the finest team in the business. There I was, a grammatical attachment between Ryan and the team. I approved the film, not because it was honest, because I was tired and there were 4 days left, and the Franklin needed a final guest count. The seating chart took 3 hours and one argument about people who had been divorced so long that Mom believed they should be over it. "You can't put Denny with Paul Jameson," she said. "They worked together for 17 years. Paul got the fishing boat. From Denny's divorce? Don't pretend you don't remember." I didn't know they had shared custody of a boat. It was a very ugly situation. We were at my parents' dining table, surrounded by place cards, menu cards, and squares of paper representing tables. Mom wore reading glasses on a chain and moved names with tweezers because she said fingers made the cards look handled. She placed the old employees at tables 14 and 15 behind a column near the ballroom doors. "These are terrible seats," I said. "They're close to the restrooms. Calvin is the only one who asked for that. They all appreciate convenience. Put the original team near the stage. The clients need those tables. The clients didn't build the company." Mom's tweezers stopped. "That isn't what your father means when he says that. I didn't mention Dad. You don't have to anymore." I moved the cards for Luis, Marlene, Denny, and Calvin to tables 6 and 7. Mom moved them back. I moved 2 client groups behind the column. She gasped. "That is an $8 million account. They'll survive reduced visibility. You're being childish. I'm seating elderly former employees where they can hear. Denny has a hearing aid, which he turns off when he's bored." Mom removed her glasses. "Are you planning to make a scene Saturday?" The question was so direct I almost respected it. "No." "Your father is worried." "About what?" "That you're going to use the anniversary to air grievances. I'm planning centerpieces. You know what I mean. I'm not making a scene." Her shoulders lowered. I looked at the tiny cards bearing the names of people who had worked holidays, missed dinners, made mistakes, covered mistakes, and carried cabinets up staircases that architects had sworn were wide enough. "But I'm not protecting him from one either," I said. Mom put her glasses back on. "The old employees stay at 14 and 15. I moved Luis to table 6 after she went to bed. On Friday, Ryan ran the production meeting from a handwritten agenda. It lasted 41 minutes. He had spoken with each department beforehand, flagged an installation conflict before Thomas could mention it, and remembered to ask purchasing about lead times. He got the staffing forecast wrong, but only by 2 people. Afterward, he stood beside me collecting coffee cups. "How was I?" he asked. "Do you want a grade?" "No. I want you to say I was magnificent. You were present. That's what Dad says about art he hates. You did fine." He smiled. "Fine from you is magnificent." I carried the cups toward the break room. He followed. "You didn't have to stay up all night preparing," I said. "I didn't. You emailed purchasing at 2:14. I happened to be awake. And then estimating at 2:40. I'm very social." I dropped the cups into the trash. Ryan leaned against the counter. "I didn't know you talked to that many people every week." "I know." That wasn't an accusation. "I know." He looked toward the floor, where Thomas was demonstrating something beside the router. "I thought the reports came to you." "They do. But you also go get them." "Yes." "Why isn't that a formal process?" "Because formal processes don't answer the phone at 6 in the morning. He nodded slowly. "We need to fix that. We." This time, the word didn't bother me as much. He bought dinner that night, and we ate in the conference room while reviewing the anniversary timeline. For 20 minutes, it felt almost normal. He stole mushrooms from my pizza. I corrected his spelling of hors d'oeuvres. Neither of us mentioned the presidency. Then Ryan closed the schedule. "I'm going to thank you in my speech." I looked up. "Not operations," he said. "You." "For what?" "Everything." "That's broad. I'll be specific. Will you tell them you knew about the promotion for 3 months?" His expression fell. "That's not really banquet material. Neither is the version where you built the company. I didn't make the film. You're standing at the center of it." He pushed his plate away. "What do you want me to do? Refuse the presidency?" I considered the question. "Would you?" He laughed once, but I didn't. "Claire, you asked. Dad has made the decision." "So? So refusing would blow up the company." "No, it would blow up dinner. You know that's not true." He was right. Dad would treat public refusal as betrayal. Clients would hear. Employees would worry. Mom might actually assault someone with a centerpiece. "I don't want your job," I said. "I want mine to stop being described as helping you. It will." "When?" "When I'm president." The answer came too easily. I sat back. Ryan saw it. "I mean, after the transition," he said, "when Dad isn't controlling every title and sentence, you still need him to give you authority before you'll use your voice. That's how authority works." "No, That's how permission works." He left without taking the pizza. Saturday morning, the Franklin ballroom smelled like carpet cleaner and flowers. The original shop sign hung behind the stage, its faded blue letters lit from below. Rebecca directed servers while Mom adjusted white roses by fractions of an inch. I built the photograph display near the entrance. Dad had approved 24 images. I used 31. The Thanksgiving photograph went in the center, inside the plastic sleeve Luis had given me. Beneath it, I wrote, "Westerville Hospital Team, Thanksgiving 2002. Dad found it before noon. I said, "Not this one. It tells the story. It makes us look desperate." We were desperate. He reached for the frame. I put my hand over it. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Ryan called Dad from the stage to check the microphone, and Dad let go. Guests began arriving at 5:30. Former employees touched the old sign. Current employees laughed at old hairstyles. Clients stood before the finished projects and complimented Ryan. Luis stopped at the Thanksgiving photograph and read the caption. "You left something out," he said. "What?" He took a pen from his pocket, opened the frame, and added 4 words beneath mine. "Claire stayed. We all stayed." He clicked the frame shut. Across the ballroom, Ryan was reading a sheet of paper beside the podium. When he saw me looking, he folded it and came over. "Dad changed his speech," he said. "How?" "He's announcing the presidency tonight. He told me after the anniversary. He changed his mind." "And?" Ryan glanced toward the tables filling with employees, former staff, clients, and family friends, and he added a line about you. The lights dimmed. On the screen, my father's younger face appeared in front of the first rented warehouse. Ryan touched my arm. "Please," he said. "Whatever he says, don't do this tonight." "I'm not doing anything," I said. "That's not reassuring. I am standing beside a photograph. You know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. You want me to protect the evening from the truth. I want you not to turn tonight into a fight. Then tell Dad not to start one." The ballroom went dark before Ryan could answer. He hurried toward the head table while I remained beside the display. On the screen, Dad stood 20 pounds lighter in front of the Benton Road shop, talking about buying his first table saw at auction. Music swelled beneath his voice. Cole had chosen something with piano and soft drums, the soundtrack of a person overcoming a tasteful amount of adversity. Guests laughed at photographs of the old warehouse. Dad smiled when his younger self appeared beside a delivery truck with a hood held down by rope. Mom leaned toward him and whispered something. He shook his head, but his smile deepened. For a few minutes, I understood what Dad had wanted. The film showed the company becoming real. The first sign, the first 5 employees, the move to Benton Road, a row of unfinished teller lines, the year we added healthcare work. Men and women grew older between photographs. Hair disappeared. Safety glasses became mandatory. Our trucks changed from white vans with magnetic signs to a fleet with matching blue lettering. Then Ryan appeared. The pacing quickened. Contracts grew larger. Dad talked about vision. A client called Ryan relentless in the best possible way. The slow-motion drawer opened beautifully. At the back, Denny whispered, "What the hell is he looking for?" Marlene shushed him. Luis's Thanksgiving clip played. He described the deadline and the broken panel saw. The film cut just before he mentioned me. My single sentence followed. "I'm proud of what we've built." The plural sounded desperate. Over the closing image of Ryan beside the Westerville nurses' station, Dad's voice praised my operational leadership. Then the music rose, and the Bennett logo filled the screen. The room applauded. Dad wiped one eye quickly and blamed the lights. Dinner came out in waves. Servers carried plates of prime rib and roasted chicken between tables, while Mom monitored them with the intensity of a military commander. Calvin asked a passing waiter if the oxygen machine qualified him for 2 desserts. Denny turned off his hearing aid during a client's speech and nodded pleasantly through the entire thing. I discovered Mom had moved Luis's place card back to table 14. "I enjoy convenience," he said when I apologized. "You're behind a column. I spent 20 years working behind Frank. I'm used to the view. Marlene pushed a dinner roll into her purse. For later? I asked. They throw these away. You don't know that, I know institutions. At the head table, Ryan's seat was between Dad and me. Mom sat on Dad's other side, watching the room for evidence of dissatisfaction. Whenever I looked toward her, she smiled too brightly. Ryan barely touched his food. What does the line say? I asked. What line? The one Dad added about me. He cut his potato into pieces that became progressively smaller. It's not bad. That's not an answer. He's trying to acknowledge you. How? Ryan set down his knife. Can we please get through dinner? You asked me not to react to something you won't tell me. I didn't write it. You read it. Claire. Dad leaned around him. What's going on? Nothing, Ryan said. I smiled at Dad. The chicken's dry. Mom heard from 2 seats away. Her head snapped toward the kitchen. It is not. After dinner, Rebecca signaled the servers to clear the tables. Cole positioned one camera near the stage, and his assistant moved along the wall with another. The original shop sign glowed above the podium. Dad was first. He thanked clients, employees, suppliers, and Mom. When he thanked her for enduring 30 years of sawdust, late dinners, and phone calls during vacations, the room stood and applauded. Mom pressed both hands to her chest. Dad stepped away from the podium and kissed her forehead. It was tender. That was Dad's trick. Just when I wanted to reduce him to the worst thing he had done, he revealed another room inside himself. He told the story of the first shop, this time adding details that had not made the film. The landlord who let him pay rent in installments. The installer who accepted a used truck in place of 2 months' wages. The first client who returned after Dad installed an entire reception counter backward. I told her it depended which side you entered from, he said. The room laughed. Then he introduced Ryan. My brother walked to the podium carrying 2 folded pages. He looked comfortable until the applause stopped. Then he looked at me. Most of you know I'm the talker in the family, he began. Unfortunately, I said. The head table laughed. So did Ryan. My sister is the one who knows when I've talked us into trouble. More laughter. He thanked the sales team by name. He thanked Thomas and production, the installers, estimating, purchasing, accounting, and the office staff. He thanked Rebecca for preventing Mom from building centerpieces tall enough to require permits. Mom laughed with everyone else, though her eyes narrowed. Then Ryan looked down at his pages. I've had the privilege of bringing some major opportunities into this company, but a sale is a promise, and a promise is only worth what happens after you make it. He turned toward me. Claire is the person who makes it happen. Every good thing I've done here has her fingerprints somewhere on it. The applause started before he finished. It was a generous sentence. It was also another version of me standing behind his good things. Still, I clapped. Ryan saw me. Something in his face fell, as if he understood that gratitude could arrive too late and still ask to be rewarded. He abandoned his prepared pages after that. He talked about Dad teaching him to show up after losing a bid because clients remembered who behaved well when disappointed. He told the room he was proud to be Frank Bennett's son and Claire Bennett's brother. Then he returned to his seat. You did well, I said. Fine or magnificent? Fine. He smiled, but his hand shook when he reached for his water. Dad returned to the podium. There's one more thing, he said. Ryan became still. Dad talked about continuity. He talked about the company reaching a point where the next generation needed to take responsibility. He said leadership was not something given, but something earned over years of risk, relationships, and growth. Then he announced that Ryan would become president of Bennett Commercial Millwork. The room erupted. People stood. Someone near sales whistled. Dad motioned for Ryan to join him, and my brother rose with one hand over his heart, wearing the stunned expression he had apparently found despite knowing for 3 months. He hugged Dad. I kept my hands in my lap. Mom leaned across the empty chair. Smile. I looked at her. Please, she whispered. Dad raised the microphone. And none of this would be possible without the person who keeps everything and everyone together. My daughter, Claire, will remain our director of operations, providing the steady support every great leader needs. He gestured toward me. People applauded again. I stood because remaining seated would have looked like collapse. Dad smiled, relieved. That was the line. Not every great man, as I would remember it later, every great leader. A cleaner phrase, more modern, just as small. Ryan looked at me from the stage. He knew. Dad continued. 30 years ago, I started with an empty shop and a few good people. My son took that foundation and built Bennett into a regional company. Ryan had the courage to imagine what we could become. On the screen behind them, photographs began moving again. Ryan shaking hands, Ryan cutting ribbons, Ryan standing beside work I had priced and scheduled. I felt strangely calm. Dad smiled into the microphone. I'd like the original team to stand with the two men who made this company what it is. A chair scraped near the back. Luis rose slowly, buttoned his brown jacket, and stepped around the column Mom had placed in front of him. He walked toward the stage. Dad extended one arm. Luis passed him. He passed Ryan. Then he stopped behind my chair and placed one scarred hand on the wooden back. Marlene stood next. She came forward carrying her purse full of dinner rolls and positioned herself beside Luis. Denny followed, leaving his hearing aid on the table. Calvin pushed himself up with the help of his duck-headed cane. His oxygen machine bumped against a chair, and he swore at it before joining the line. Others rose. Paul Jameson. Denise Turner, who had run purchasing from 1998 to 2007. Carl Reed, one of the installers from Westerville. They formed an uneven row behind me. Nobody clapped. My father lowered the microphone. What is this? Luis looked at him. You asked the builders to stand, Frank. The words crossed the ballroom cleanly. Dad's face went red. That's not what I meant. I know, Luis said. For a second, nothing moved. Then Thomas stood at table 9. He didn't approach me. He simply stood beside his chair. The installation manager rose. Then 2 estimators. The finishing supervisor. People from current production looked at one another and stood in clusters, some awkwardly, some with their arms folded. Not everyone stood. Several members of sales remained seated. Some clients looked confused. One of our bankers lifted halfway and then appeared to reconsider his relationship with gravity. Rebecca stood near the service doors with both hands pressed to her mouth. Cole kept filming. Dad turned to me. You arranged this. No. Don't lie to me. I didn't. Luis's hand tightened on my chair. Ryan stepped toward the microphone. Dad. Dad ignored him. You invited them. You placed that photograph. You've been waiting all night to humiliate us. Frank, Marlene said. She didn't know. How would you know? Because Claire can't keep a secret when she's angry. She sends an agenda. A nervous laugh moved through the room and died. I looked at the faces behind me. These people knew I had pushed them too hard. They remembered my mistakes, my sharp voice, the calls made on holidays, the apologies I had not offered. They were not standing because I had been kinder than Dad or more charming than Ryan. They were standing because I had been there. That did not absolve me. It did make me real. Ryan held out the microphone. I didn't take it. Claire, he said softly. Dad stared at me from beneath the old shop sign. If you have something to say, he said, say it. The challenge in his voice helped. I walked to the stage. Ryan handed me the microphone and stepped back. I looked at Luis first, then Marlene, Denny, Calvin, and the current employees standing among white tablecloths and abandoned coffee cups. Thank you, I said. My voice shook. I let it. But if we're telling the truth tonight, then we tell all of it. This company was built by people who gave too much because the Bennetts kept telling them it was temporary. I was one of the people asking. Sometimes I made our emergency everybody else's obligation. Marlene watched me without smiling. I'm sorry for that. Dad shifted behind me. I turned toward the head table. I am proud of the company. I'm proud of Ryan. I'm proud of work nobody in this room will ever see, because good operations look like nothing happened. A few people laughed quietly, but I did not agree to remain beside Ryan as his support. I was informed. Ryan looked down. That announcement was not mine. That future was assigned to me without a conversation. So whatever happens next, please don't mistake my silence tonight for consent. I handed Ryan the microphone. Dad said my name, but I walked off the stage. Mom caught my arm near the table. You promised you wouldn't make a scene. No, I said. I promised I wouldn't start one. Then I picked up my purse and left the old team standing behind my empty chair. The parking garage smelled like damp concrete and somebody's cigar. I made it to my car before my hands started shaking. My phone lit up before I unlocked the door. Ryan, then Mom, then Ryan again. A message from Rebecca asked whether I was safe to drive. One from Thomas said only, "Well." I sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. Through the windshield, downtown Columbus looked fractured by the concrete columns. People in formal clothes crossed the garage toward their cars, laughing, carrying flowers, checking phones. Nobody looked like they had just watched a family split open beside a chocolate mousse. The passenger door opened. Luis lowered himself into the seat. "You should lock this," he said. "You shouldn't get into women's cars. You invited me." To dinner. Dinner got weird. He pulled the door shut and adjusted his jacket. Up close, I could see a spot of gravy on his tie. "Did Marlene plan that?" I asked. "Plan what? Standing." "No. You all just happened to do the same thing?" "People saw me. That's not an explanation. It's how standing works." I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel. Luis sat quietly. "I shouldn't have taken the microphone," I said. "No, you should have taken it 10 years ago. Dad thinks I arranged the whole thing. Frank thinks Weather happens to criticize him. He'll blame everyone who stood. He already didn't invite half of us for 10 years. What's he gonna do? Not invite us harder?" I lifted my head. Luis's mouth twitched. "I didn't want to humiliate Ryan," I said. "Then why'd he look humiliated?" "Because Dad praised him. That's a strange family. He didn't write the speech. He stood for it. He did thank me, I heard. He's trying. So are you. Look where that got everybody." My phone vibrated against the console. Dad this time. Luis looked at the screen. "You going to answer?" "No." "Good." I didn't come down 14 floors to listen to Frank yell through a dashboard. "Did Marlene send you? She's stealing desserts." "Of course." He opened the door, then stopped. "Don't use us as your excuse." I looked at him. "We stood because Frank asked the wrong people to take credit," he said. "What you do next is yours." He climbed out and closed the door. I drove home in my banquet dress and parked crookedly between the lines. At 11:20, Ryan knocked on my apartment door. He had removed his jacket. His tie hung loose, and a white rose from Mom's centerpiece was tucked into his breast pocket. He held my coat over one arm. "You forgot this. I was wearing it when I arrived. You left it on your chair." I stepped aside. Ryan entered and placed the coat across the back of my couch. My apartment had one lamp on and a laundry basket full of towels beside the armchair. He looked too formal for the room, like a waiter who had become lost. "Dad's furious," he said. I gathered. "He thinks Luis set him up." "Luis didn't." "I know." "Do you?" Ryan rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Mom cried in the ballroom. Mom cries at hardware store commercials. Not like this." I went into the kitchen and filled a glass with water. He followed. "Did the event finish?" I asked. "Technically." "What does that mean?" "Calvin gave a speech nobody scheduled. Oh no. He told a 15-minute story about Dad electrocuting himself in 1991. He touched a live ballast. According to Calvin, he flew 6 feet. According to Dad, it was 6 inches. There were sound effects. I laughed into the glass. Ryan did too. Then the laughter disappeared, leaving us where we had been. "He shouldn't have announced it like that," Ryan said. "No. And he shouldn't have used that line." "No. I didn't know the exact wording. You knew enough to warn me." "I did warn you. You said he added a line about me after the lights went down." I found out 10 minutes earlier. You could have stopped him. In a ballroom full of 200 people? You could have told him you wouldn't go on stage. And then what? He announces it anyway while I sit there looking ungrateful? I stared at him. Ryan shook his head. That came out wrong. No, it came out right. He sat at my kitchen table. I wanted it, he said. The presidency. Yes. I know. I still want it. I know that too. I don't think wanting it means I wanted him to erase you. You accepted the version where he did, because I kept telling myself I'd fix it after you had what you wanted. He looked toward the dark window. Yes. The honesty made me sit down. He pulled the flower from his pocket and rolled the stem between his fingers. Dad asked me to call a staff meeting Monday, he said. He wants us to present a united front. We don't have one. We could. No, you don't even know what I'm asking. You're asking me to stand beside you while Dad announces the same plan to the employees, except this time I smile. I'm asking you not to make people think the company's falling apart. It isn't. They watched half the room stand against the owner. They stood for the people who built it. Clients left talking about family conflict. The family conflict was on the stage before Luis left his chair. Ryan pressed both hands flat on the table. I'm going to be president whether you come Monday or not. I know. What does that mean? It means you should prepare. He stared at me. You're leaving. I did not answer quickly enough. His face changed. Claire. I haven't decided the terms. The terms? I'm not staying in the job Dad described, so we changed the description. We've had years to change it. I didn't know you were this unhappy. That's because whenever I objected, you made me laugh. He looked down at the rose. That wasn't intentional. I know, which was part of why I loved him. He left at midnight. Before he went, he straightened my coat on the couch, an unnecessary gesture that nearly undid me. Mom arrived Sunday afternoon carrying 3 foil containers from the banquet. I had not invited her. You didn't eat, she said when I opened the door. I ate chicken. You complained about the chicken. It was dry. She walked past me and put the containers in my refrigerator. Prime rib, potatoes, and chocolate mousse slid among mustard jars and a carton of eggs. Mom was still wearing her church clothes. She removed 1 white rose petal from her sleeve and placed it on the counter. Your father didn't sleep. I'm sorry. No, you're not. I'm sorry he didn't sleep. She turned toward me. Do you know how humiliating that was? Yes, he gave you credit. He assigned me to Ryan. He said you were essential. Essential to whom? To the company? To all of us. There it was again. My usefulness presented as intimacy. Mom sat at my kitchen table in the same chair Ryan had used. I don't understand when everything became a competition, she said. It isn't a competition if one person is running the race and the other is carrying the water. Your brother thanked you. After accepting the prize, he has spent his whole life feeling that you were smarter than him. I leaned against the counter. Did he tell you that? A mother knows. A mother decides. Her lips parted. You decided he needed confidence, I said. You decided I didn't need recognition. Dad decided he needed a son at the front. Everybody decided what I could live without. We thought you knew how much we valued you. You valued what I did. That isn't fair. What do you value about me that has nothing to do with how I help this family? She went still. I waited. Mom's eyes filled. She looked away before the tears fell. I love you, she said. I love you too. It did not answer the question. She stood, gathered her purse, and paused at the door. Your father may not forgive what happened. I'm not asking him to. Then what are you asking? For him to stop making forgiveness the price of disagreeing. Mom left without taking the rose petal. I spent the evening writing my resignation. The first version was 6 pages. The second was 2. The final version was 4 sentences. I did not list grievances. I did not explain the banquet. I stated that I was resigning as director of operations effective Friday. I offered to discuss a separate 6-week transition agreement, limited to 25 hours per week at a consulting rate, with written responsibilities and no expectation of availability outside those hours. Then I printed 2 copies. The shop was quiet when I arrived Monday at 6:15. A strip of blue light showed above the warehouse roofs. Inside, the night shift was finishing, and the break room television murmured to nobody. The anniversary binder still sat on my desk. I removed the Thanksgiving photograph from the front pocket, where I had placed it after the banquet. Luis's 4 words remained beneath the caption. Claire stayed. We all stayed. I set the photograph face down. At 7, I called Thomas. Purchasing, installation, estimating, and accounting into the conference room. I did not mention my resignation. I reviewed active projects, confirmed deadlines, and assigned each department to begin documenting the decisions that currently passed through me. Thomas watched me the whole time. Afterward, he stayed seated. So, he said. So what? Was that a meeting or a will reading? Documentation is overdue. You're leaving. Probably. He leaned back. Probably by choice or probably because Frank throws you out? Choice. Good. The word hurt. Tomas saw it. I mean, good that it's yours, he said. Not good that you're going. I know. Who's going to run operations? Someone who doesn't keep half the process in her head. That person doesn't exist. Then you'd better start taking notes. He looked at the folder I had given him. You're still protecting us, he said. I'm protecting the work. Same thing sometimes. At 8:30, Dad and Ryan arrived together. Dad walked past my office without looking in. Ryan stopped. You came. I work here. He noticed the folders stacked on my desk. What are those? Transition materials. His face lost color. Claire, don't. Dad called him from the hallway. Conference room. The staff meeting began at 9. Dad announced Ryan's presidency again. This time, he did not mention me until a current employee asked whether my role was changing. Dad looked toward me. Claire will continue leading operations, he said. I stood. No, I said, I won't. The room became silent. I placed one copy of my resignation in front of Dad and the other in front of Ryan. My last day as director is Friday. Dad did not touch the paper. You're emotional, he said. I wrote it last night. You're abandoning the company because you didn't get applause. I'm leaving because you built a future around my labor and never asked for my consent. He pushed the letter back across the table. I don't accept this. It isn't a request. Ryan picked up his copy. Dad looked around the room, suddenly aware that everyone was watching. You walk away now, he said quietly, and you prove you were never the leader you think you are. I slid the letter back toward him. A leader prepares people to function without her. Then I opened the first transition folder. Nobody moved. Dad looked at the folder as if it might contain something contagious. What is that? He asked. Active project responsibilities. The red tabs are decisions due this week. Blue tabs are recurring processes. Yellow tabs are issues that currently depend on information held by one person. You, mostly. Ryan opened his copy. There are a lot of yellow tabs. Yes. Dad pushed his chair back. This meeting is over. Thomas stood first. The others followed slowly, gathering notebooks and avoiding eye contact. Nobody spoke until Calvin from accounting reached the door. Do we still process the Franklin balance today? He asked. Yes, I said. Dad said, of course. Calvin nodded and left. When the door closed, Dad turned on me. You planned this. I wrote the letter last night. You built those folders before the banquet. I started documenting after you announced the succession plan. So you've been preparing to punish us. I've been preparing the company for the future you chose. By leaving, by making sure leaving doesn't damage the work. You think binders run a company? No, people do. Then stay and do your job. I resigned from my job. Ryan kept turning pages. Can we stop saying the same thing louder? Dad pointed at him. This is your first day as president. Handle it. Ryan looked at me. I almost felt sorry for him. Claire offered a transition, he said. At a consulting rate, Dad snapped. Did you read that part? I did. She wants us to pay extra for the job she already has. After Friday, I don't have it. You don't get to set your own price. I do if you want to hire me. Dad laughed without humor. You're blackmailing your own family. No, blackmail requires a secret. Ours was filmed. Ryan closed the folder. The rate is reasonable. Dad turned toward him. Whose side are you on? The question landed with enough force that Ryan leaned back. I'm on the company's side. I built this company, and she knows how it runs. So do I. Then we don't need the contract, I said. Dad's eyes moved to me. Ryan pinched the bridge of his nose. We need the contract. For the first time, the presidency did not look like a prize. The rest of that week was both ordinary and unbearable. Projects continued. Phones rang. Drawings came back marked in red. A delivery driver hit the bollard beside the receiving bay and insisted the bollard had moved. I approved overtime, corrected a material order, and trained people on work I had never considered training because I had never considered not doing it. I showed Thomas how I built the staffing forecast from probability instead of sales optimism. Ryan won't like this column, he said. It's not a popularity column. I walked the installation manager through my client risk notes. You wrote likes certainty more than accuracy beside Riverside, he said. It means give them a firm callback time even if you don't have the answer yet. You know that from meetings? I know it from the way their director breathes. He stared at me. That won't go in the formal process, I said. Purchasing took over the supplier calendar. Accounting absorbed the weekly cash summary. Estimating agreed to assign one person to attend production meetings instead of waiting for me to translate changes afterward. The work that had looked like one job became pieces in 8 departments. Every time somebody accepted a piece, I felt lighter and less necessary. I had spent years wishing those were the same feeling. On Thursday afternoon, Ryan brought me a revised consulting agreement. 6 weeks, 25 hours per week, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 2:15. No after-hours availability, no client meetings unless scheduled within those hours. My rate was $10 less per hour than I had proposed and still nearly twice my former salary when calculated hourly. Dad insisted on negotiating, Ryan said. He crossed out $10. He needed a victory. He also added as reasonably required to responsibilities. I crossed it back out. I looked at the line. Ryan's initials sat beside the deletion. Did he agree? He signed. Dad's signature was on the last page, hard enough to score the paper. You're really going to do this, Ryan said. Yes. What happens after 6 weeks? You run the company. I mean to you. I don't know. He disliked that answer. So did I. Friday, I packed my office into 2 cardboard boxes. I took the framed photograph of Mom, Dad, Ryan, and me at the company picnic in 2008. I took my red stapler, the ceramic mug Marlene had given me that said I survived another meeting, and a pothos plant that had remained alive despite 12 years of neglect. I left the anniversary binder. Thomas organized a goodbye lunch without calling it a goodbye lunch. There were sandwiches in the break room and a sheet cake decorated with blue frosting. Someone had written, "Good luck, Claire," and then squeezed, "We're doomed" beneath it in smaller letters. Dad did not attend. Ryan stood near the coffee machine and made a short speech about transition, gratitude, and how I wasn't really leaving yet. Nobody believed him. When I returned to my office, Elvis sat in my chair wearing a visitor badge with my name on it. Thomas leaned against the doorway. He applied for operations director. He lacks experience. He's been observing management for decades. He throws himself off mezzanines under pressure. That's leadership material around here. I touched the bust's plastic hair. Keep him, I said. He belongs to the shop. You do too. I lifted the first box. Not in the same way. Dad appeared in the hallway as I carried the plant toward the exit. He stopped far enough away that neither of us had to decide whether he would help. You don't have to do this, he said. I already did. You'll be back Monday, as a consultant. That's a word on paper. It's the boundary. He looked at the box in my arms. A boundary from what? I could have said from you. Instead, I said, from being the answer before anyone asks the question. His expression did not change. I walked past him. Monday morning, I woke at 5:40 without an alarm. For 22 years, my body had treated dawn like an emergency. I lay in bed listening for the phone and thinking about the Ashland installation until I remembered it no longer belonged to me before 8. At 6:12, my phone rang. Ryan. I watched it stop. He called again at 6:14. Then a message appeared. Call me, building not on fire, loading dock may be. I turned the phone face down. It rang a third time. I got up, made coffee, and stood in my kitchen while the sky lightened beyond the apartments across the street. At 7:30, I showered. At 7:50, I drove to the shop. Smoke drifted from the dumpster beside the loading dock. Ryan stood outside with Thomas and a fire extinguisher. His dress shirt was untucked, and gray powder covered one sleeve. Morning, I said. He stared at me. You watched the phone ring. My hours start at 8. The dumpster was on fire. The building wasn't. It could have spread. Thomas shook the extinguisher. It was 3 oily rags. Which can spread, Ryan said. To other garbage, I said. He followed me inside. I didn't know who had the fire company inspection number. It's posted beside the alarm panel. I know that now. Good. You're enjoying this. I was asleep for most of it. You were not. I glanced at the clock above the break room door. It's 8. What do you need? He looked offended by the precision. Then he pulled a folded sheet from his pocket. The Ashland crew found the teller line wall 2 inches out of square. What did the field report say? It says the wall was verified. By whom? He checked. Paul. Call Paul. I did. He says it changed after framing. Then ask the general contractor to verify. They're blaming us. What do you think we should do? I called you. That isn't an answer. Ryan exhaled hard. I waited. We could scribe the end panel in the field, he said. Yes. But the reveal will be uneven. Yes. Or remake the panel after we get final dimensions. And delay opening. He looked down at the report. Field scribe, he decided. Then a trim return to make the reveal look intentional. Good. He blinked. Good? That's what I would do. For a second, he looked pleased, then annoyed that he was pleased. Could you call the client? No. You know them. So do you. They're already angry. Then call before they become creative. He walked away, muttering something about consultants. At 2:10, Dad entered my office carrying a list. I had not unpacked either box. The desk held my laptop, the transition folders, and nothing else. These need to be handled today, he said. I read the list. Supplier review, annual insurance meeting, capital equipment proposals, client holiday gifts. None of these are in the transition agreement. They're operations. Not anymore. You're here. Until 2:15. He looked at the wall clock. It's 2:10. Yes. You can't leave in the middle of work. I can finish the supplier review tomorrow. The other items belong to you or Ryan. Holiday gifts have always been yours. Mom chooses them. You order them. Then Mom can order them. Dad lowered the page. You're making every simple thing difficult. No, I'm letting simple things belong to the people who decide them. At 2:15, I closed my laptop. Dad stood in the doorway while I put on my coat. Where are you going? Home. To do what? I had no answer. That frightened me more than leaving. I'll let you know, I said. The apartment was silent when I returned. No reports waited. Nobody needed a decision. I put the pothos on the windowsill, folded the towels that had been sitting in the basket since the anniversary, and ate cold prime rib from one of Mom's foil containers. At 6, I reached for my phone to check the production schedule. I stopped myself. At 7, Ryan sent a photograph of the finished teller line. The trim return looked clean. Solved it, he wrote. I typed 3 different responses before sending one. Looks good. His reply came immediately. That's all? I smiled at the screen and set the phone down. The next morning, Ryan was already in the conference room when I arrived. The transition folders were spread across the table, filled with his notes. He looked exhausted. He also looked prepared. "I need you to teach me the staffing forecast again," he said. "You know it. I know the math. I don't know when sales is lying. Sales is always lying. I'm sales." "I know." He smiled faintly. Then Dad entered, dropped a new contract on the table, and said Ryan had promised a 6-week hospital renovation could be completed in 4. Ryan closed his eyes. Dad looked at me. "Fix it." I looked at my brother instead. "What did you promise?" I asked. Ryan opened his notebook, and for the first time in 22 years, I waited for him to explain the problem before I agreed to carry any part of it. Ryan turned the notebook toward me. "St. Anne's is renovating 2 floors," he said. "Patient rooms, charting stations, medication rooms, staff lounges. How much millwork?" "About $800,000. How much did you promise in 4 weeks?" "All of it." Thomas, standing near the door, made a soft, choking sound. Dad ignored him. "We have capacity. We have work already scheduled," I said. "We can run Saturdays. Volunteers only. People like overtime. Some people like seeing their houses." Ryan tapped the notebook. "I thought the schedule started after demolition." "It does," I said. "They moved demolition up. Did the contract date change?" "No." "So you didn't promise 4 weeks. You promised delivery by a date that became 4 weeks." He nodded. Dad gestured impatiently. "Same result?" "No. Different conversation with the client." Ryan looked at me. "How?" "If you promised an aggressive schedule, you apologize and renegotiate. If their field conditions changed while the contractual date stayed fixed, you show them the impact and offer options." "What options?" I pulled the project drawings closer. "Which areas open first? 2nd floor patient rooms. Then phase delivery. Patient rooms and charting stations first, staff lounges later." Dad shook his head. "They want complete floors. They want patient rooms producing revenue more than they want cabinets beside a microwave." Tomas nodded. "We could have rooms and charting ready in 4 if finishing gets approved samples by Friday." "What about medication rooms?" Ryan asked. "Depends on hardware." He wrote that down. Dad looked at me. "Call them." "No. For God's sake, Claire. Ryan has the relationship. He brought you the problem, and I gave him a plan. A plan isn't an agreement." Ryan closed the notebook. "I'll call." Dad turned on him. "You're going to let her walk away from this? She didn't sell it. She runs operations." "Until 2:15, I said. Dad's stare could have stripped veneer. Ryan took the drawings. "I'll speak to St. Anne's, then set up a call with Thomas and their contractor. Have estimating price the acceleration," I said. "Don't give away overtime because you're embarrassed." He added another note. Dad watched the exchange with growing irritation. "This is what you've wanted," he said to me. "What?" "To make him ask permission for everything." Ryan's pen stopped. "I'm not asking permission," he said. Dad looked at him. "I'm learning," Ryan continued. The words seemed to offend Dad more. At 2:12, Ryan came to my office. "The client call is at 3. I saw the invitation. You declined it. My hours end at 2:15. This is your plan. It's your call. What if they push back?" "They will." "What if they threaten to rebid?" "They won't. Replacing us costs more time. And if they do, let them. A bad contract doesn't become good because you're afraid to lose it." He stood in the doorway, reading my face for the briefing I was refusing to provide. "Lead with what changed," I said. "Then the room's first option. Don't apologize for capacity. Do apologize for not discussing phasing earlier." Ryan nodded. I closed my laptop. "That's it?" "That's it. You could stay 45 minutes. "Yes." He waited. I put on my coat. The next morning, a revised schedule was waiting in my inbox. St. Anne's had accepted phase delivery, approved the acceleration charge, and moved the staff lounges into week 6. Ryan passed my office twice before finally coming in. They didn't even argue about the lounges, he said. They don't care about lounges. They argued about the medication rooms. They care about drugs. He sat in the chair across from me. I would have promised everything, he said. You did. I mean, on the call. If they'd pushed, I would have said yes. I know. You make that sound like a disease. It's treatable. He laughed. Then he looked around the office, still bare except for transition materials. You could stay, he said. I am staying. Until 2:15. I mean, after the contract. No, you answered fast. I've had time. We could change your title. To what? Vice President of Operations. I already did the job without the title. Then Chief Operating Officer. A new title for the same arrangement. Not the same. You'd report directly to me. I stared at him. He winced. That sounded better in my head, I'm sure. I mean, you'd have full authority over operations. Until you sold something, we'd create approval rules. Dad would follow them? His silence answered, Ryan, you're trying to build a better cage. That's dramatic. You inherited the company's story, and now you're offering me a nicer title if I keep making it true. He leaned forward. I'm asking because I want you there. You want what I do there. That's the same thing. No, it isn't. He looked hurt. I let him. That was new, too. The 6-week transition developed a rhythm. I arrived at 8, answered questions, taught processes, and left at 2:15. The first week, everybody called me after hours. The second week, only department heads did. By the 4th, my phone remained silent most evenings. Nothing collapsed. Orders still shipped. Payroll cleared. Clients complained at their usual volume. Ryan learned to arrive before production meetings and stopped using the phrase strong activity without numbers attached. Tomas took over staffing forecasts and improved them by adding a column labeled Ryan's Optimism Tax. Dad returned to the office full-time, despite having announced he would step back. He overruled a purchasing decision on Monday, changed it on Tuesday, and blamed the confusion on poor communication Wednesday. He began copying me on emails after midnight. I answered at 8. He started forwarding them at 7:59 with the word urgent. I answered at 8. The company felt different without me absorbing every collision. People had to speak directly to one another. Sometimes they did it badly. Purchasing and production argued for 3 days about sheet inventory before creating a shared report I had suggested 5 years earlier. Installation began attending estimating reviews. Accounting stopped waiting for me to collect overdue project approvals and called project managers themselves. Some people resented the extra responsibility. Some discovered they liked having it. I discovered afternoons. At first, I wasted them aggressively. I stood in grocery aisles reading labels. I had my oil changed before the warning light came on. I joined a gym, attended twice, and learned that I hated stationary bicycles in a way that felt personal. Then I met Marlene and Luis for lunch at a diner where Luis argued with the waitress about whether soup counted as a beverage. It's in a cup, he said. So is gravy sometimes, Marlene replied. Gravy is a sauce. What about tomato juice? What kind of man orders tomato juice? The kind who doesn't want to discuss his bowel habits over lunch. I set down my menu. I missed you both. They looked at me. Don't make it strange, Marlene said. We ordered. Denny joined us late and asked whether I had been fired yet. When I told him I had resigned, he raised both eyebrows. You walked out without another job? Yes, that's either brave or stupid. Thank you. Could be both. Luis stirred crackers into his soup. What do you want to do? I don't know. Good, Marlene said. How is that good? You've known what everyone else needed since you were 22. Be confused for a while. Denny pointed a French fry at me. You could run another shop. I don't want another shop. You could consult. I'm already consulting. For Frank. That barely counts as leaving. Luis glanced at me. You apologized to Denny yet? I did. She did it on camera, Denny said. Very fancy. I meant it. I know. Does that help? He chewed the fry. It doesn't change anything. No, but it helps. Marlene looked at me over her glasses. You owe me one too. I'm sorry I let Dad blame you for the insurance payment. Better. I knew he forgot to sign the check, and I stayed quiet because I thought protecting him protected the company. Very good. I'm not finished. You were getting wordy. I'm sorry. Marlene nodded. Accepted. The waitress brought Luis's soup in a bowl. He looked betrayed. Mom called that evening. She had not spoken to me since bringing the banquet leftovers, though she had mailed my dry cleaning receipt from the coat Ryan returned. Mom could maintain emotional silence while completing administrative tasks with perfect efficiency. Your father is working too much, she said. He chooses his hours. He's at the shop before 6. So is the night shift. This isn't funny. I'm not laughing. He says Ryan is making decisions without consulting him. Ryan is president. He's still inexperienced. Then Dad shouldn't have promoted him. Mom exhaled. You can't have it both ways, Claire. You can't resent being overlooked and then refuse to help when they struggle. I helped for 22 years. Families don't keep score. Only the person winning says that. She became quiet. Will you come for dinner Sunday? She asked. Will Dad speak to me? He'll be there. That wasn't the question. He doesn't know how to talk about what happened. He knows how to speak. I heard him at the banquet. You heard him. He hurt me. You're both stubborn? No, he is wrong, and I stopped cooperating. Mom inhaled sharply. I almost softened the sentence. Then I remembered her sitting at my kitchen table, unable to name one thing she valued about me that was not useful. I'll come if nobody talks about the company, I said. That's impossible. Then I won't. Claire. I love you, Mom. Good night. I ended the call before she could turn love into another task. On the final Thursday of my transition, Ryan asked me to walk the shop with him. He knew the project board now. He stopped at each department, asked specific questions, and listened to answers without looking toward me for translation. Employees still brought problems to me, but I redirected them. At the finishing room, Thomas told Ryan the St. Anne's stain sample would miss approval. Ryan asked why. Thomas explained. Ryan adjusted the sequence and called the client himself. Dad watched from across the floor. He's getting better, I said. He's too cautious. He's learning consequences. You made him afraid to make promises. No, I taught him promises cost something. Dad looked at me then. You sound pleased with yourself. I'm pleased with him. The distinction seemed to surprise us both. That afternoon, Ryan placed a folder on my desk. Inside was a formal offer for Chief Operating Officer, a substantial raise, and authority to approve or reject any contract based on capacity. It was everything I had asked for in Dad's office. Almost. At the bottom, under reporting structure, were the words, Reports to President, Ryan Bennett. Ryan stood in the doorway. I fought for every line, he said. I believe you, then say yes. I closed the folder. No. His face tightened. Why? Because you still think fairness is something you can give me once you're in charge. What else do you want? I looked at my empty office. A life that doesn't depend on you understanding. Ryan stared at the closed folder. You said the problem was authority. It was one problem. You said you wanted the title. I said I wanted my work named. It's named now. After I left. So timing invalidates everything? No, timing explains everything. He picked up the folder and opened it again, as if the right page might persuade me. You'd control operations. No contract goes through without your approval. The salary is more than Dad wanted. I'm sure it is. I'm offering you a seat beside me. You're offering me a seat that still belongs to you. What does that even mean? It means you want me back because the company works better with me inside it. You still don't understand that I need to exist somewhere. Your need isn't the reason. Ryan's face went hard. Fine. He grabbed the folder. Fine? You want to leave? Leave? But stop acting like there's a correct offer that would prove we finally value you. There isn't. You decided no before I walked in. Yes. At least admit it. I just did. He looked toward the empty shelves. You know what I think? He said. I think you liked being indispensable. I think you did everything before anybody could ask, then hated us for needing you. The words hit because Marlene and Luis had already said gentler versions. You're right, I said. Ryan blinked. I did like it. Being needed made it easier not to ask whether I was loved. His anger lost its footing. I continued. That doesn't mean you get to keep me there because I helped build it. He lowered the folder. I don't know how to be your brother if we don't work together. That's something we could learn. You say that like it's easy. No, I say it like it's overdue. The next day, at 1:30, Ryan called everyone into the shop. He had not put the meeting on the schedule. Employees gathered between assembly tables, wiping hands on aprons and carrying half-finished coffee. Dad stood near the front with his arms folded. Elvis had been moved from the tool cage to the top of a rolling cabinet, where he presided in my visitor badge. Ryan climbed onto a low platform used for stacking panels. I'll keep this short, he said. Then you're not a Bennett, Thomas called. People laughed. Ryan smiled, but he looked nervous. Claire's transition agreement ends today. I offered her a permanent position and she declined. Heads turned toward me. I stood beside the finishing room doors with my coat over one arm. I know some of you are worried about what that means, Ryan continued. The company is not closing. Nobody's job is disappearing. We have strong work scheduled and we're improving how decisions move between departments. He paused. And I need to correct something. Dad's arms tightened across his chest. At the anniversary, I accepted a version of this company's history that gave me credit for building more than I built. The shop went silent. Ryan looked toward Dad, then back at the employees. I helped grow sales. I brought in relationships I'm proud of. But the operating system that made that growth possible was built by Claire. The schedules, the department coordination, the way we evaluate risk, most of what happens between a signed contract and a finished job, that came from her. Dad spoke from the floor. It came from a team. Yes, Ryan said, and she led the team. Dad's jaw moved. Ryan looked at me. I knew that. I just didn't say it when saying it might have cost me something. Nobody applauded. I was glad. Applause would have made it another ceremony, another moment everyone could survive without changing. Tomas raised one hand. Can we put Ryan's optimism tax into official policy? The room broke into laughter. Ryan nodded. I'm told it's already binding. Afterward, employees stopped by my office one at a time. Some hugged me. Some shook my hand. Calvin from accounting asked 3 final questions about the annual budget and then hugged me while pretending he had not. Dad never came in. At 2:15, I handed my keys and badge to Ryan. Keep the badge, he said. No. Why? Because people who keep badges come in on weekends. He placed it in his pocket. We walked to the loading dock together. A cold wind blew wrappers across the parking lot. Someone had repainted the bollard the driver hit, though the new yellow did not match the old yellow. Ryan touched the folder under his arm. I meant the offer. I know. I'm still mad, I know. Are we having dinner Sunday? Not at Mom's. Agreed. Somewhere neither of us can reorganize the furniture. He smiled. I know a place. Of course you do. I put my boxes in the car. He shut the trunk, then stood with one hand resting on it. What do I do when Dad overrules me? He asked. Decide whether you're president. That's not useful. It's the only answer. I drove away at 2:23. For the first week, I woke before 6 and waited for an emergency that did not belong to me. By the second, I slept until 7. Vince Morales called on a Wednesday afternoon and asked whether I knew anything about production scheduling. No, I said. I mostly organize centerpieces. A metal fabricator in Grove City is 6 weeks behind and blaming steel. Is it steel? It's never steel. I agreed to look at their operation for 3 days. The company made stainless counters and equipment for commercial kitchens. It was loud, disorganized, and owned by two cousins who had not agreed on anything since 2009. I spent the first morning watching material move backward through the same aisle 4 times. By lunch, I knew steel was innocent. They hired me for a 4-week workflow project. I did not become rich. Nobody called me a visionary. On the first day, one of the cousins asked if I was there to take notes for the consultant. "I am the consultant," I said. He looked behind me to confirm no man had followed. By the final week, their schedule was visible. Their supervisors held daily meetings without shouting, and material stopped traveling more than the employees. I left when the project ended. That was the revelation. I could help build something and still leave it standing. Ryan and I had dinner every other Sunday. The first 2 meals became company meetings despite our agreement. By the third, I charged him $1 every time he said production. He owed me $11 before appetizers. He paid. Gradually, we learned other subjects. He hated his neighbor's wind chimes. I had begun taking long walks and discovered 3 streets near my apartment I had never noticed. He was seeing a woman named Natalie from a healthcare design firm and had concealed it because he assumed I would evaluate the conflict of interest policy. "I'm retired from evaluating you," I said. "You're consulting. Different rate." The company did not fall apart. It did stumble. St. Anne's opened its patient rooms on time, but the staff lounges finished 9 days late. A bank project lost money when Dad overruled Ryan's decision to reject a rush schedule. Ryan stopped hiding the loss inside a more successful quarter and explained it to the managers, including who had made the decision. Dad called that disloyal. Ryan called it accounting. They began arguing in front of people. Dad returned to approving small purchases, then complained that Ryan lacked independence. Ryan canceled 2 contracts Dad wanted because production could not support them. Sales dipped. Margins improved. I heard all of this from Thomas, who called monthly under the pretense of asking about my plant. The pathos is fine, I would say. Good. Also, Frank moved the installation meeting to Fridays, and everybody hates him. Not my plant. Mom and I moved more slowly. She began sending me messages with no request attached. A photograph of a lopsided pie, a complaint about the grocery store moving cereal again. Once she called simply to ask what I was reading. I nearly checked whether the number had been spoofed. We met for lunch. She did not mention Dad until dessert. "He misses you," she said. "He has my number. He doesn't know what to say. That keeps coming up." Mom traced the rim of her coffee cup. "I thought relying on you showed trust," she said. "It did." "That sounds like a contradiction." "It is." She looked at me. I said, "I liked being trusted. I loved helping. I just needed to be able to stop without becoming the bad daughter." Mom's eyes filled, but she did not turn the tears into an argument. "I don't know whether I can undo that," she said. "You can stop doing it." She nodded. It was not an apology. It was closer to one than we had ever been. Dad remained silent. My birthday passed with a card signed in Mom's handwriting and Dad's name added beneath hers. At Thanksgiving, Ryan and Mom came to my apartment. Dad stayed home claiming he had work. We ate at my kitchen table. Ryan brought a $12 bottle of wine and described it as having hints of grapes. Mom criticized my roasting pan. Nobody asked me to solve anything. After they left, I washed 3 plates and understood that absence could be peaceful without becoming empty. January turned the parking lot outside my apartment white at the edges. My consulting work expanded to 2 other local manufacturers, small projects with clear endings. I bought a second pothos. One Thursday afternoon, someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, I saw Dad standing in the hallway. He wore his shop coat and held something large beneath one arm. I opened the door. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Dad lifted the object. It was the old metal production board from the Benton Road shop, its surface scratched and stained, with years of my faded handwriting still visible beneath the new marks. "I thought this belonged to you," he said. I looked at the board. It was 4 feet wide, with a dent in the lower corner and narrow strips for magnetic job labels. Westerville Hospital was still visible beneath years of dry erase shadows. So were fragments of my old notes. Call Marlene, Veneer Tuesday, Denny, Cincinnati. Where did you find it? I asked. Behind the storage racks. I thought we threw it away. You tried. You said it was obsolete. It was. But you kept it. Dad shifted the board under his arm. Are you going to let me in? I stepped aside. He carried it into my living room, nearly knocked over the second pothos, and rested it against the wall beside the television. You have 2 of those now, he said. Plants. Those plants. They're pothos. I know what they are. You called mine an ivy for 12 years. I didn't come here to discuss plants. Clearly. You brought industrial equipment? Dad removed his coat and folded it over the arm of the couch. He remained standing. Coffee? I asked. How old is it? I can make new. That wasn't my question. I'm making new. In the kitchen, I filled the coffee maker while Dad examined my apartment as if it were a job site. He tested the wobble in one dining chair, looked at the window latch, and adjusted a cabinet door that did not need adjusting. I set 2 mugs on the table. He sat. For a while, we drank coffee and listened to the refrigerator cycle on and off. How's work? He asked. Mine or yours? Yours. It was the first time he had asked. Good. I'm helping a packaging company reorganize its warehouse. What do they package? Medical components? Plastic? Mostly. He frowned. Plastic's unpredictable. So are clients. That almost made him smile. He turned the mug between his hands. Ryan says, You're busy. I am. He says you won't come back. I won't. I didn't ask. No, you didn't. Dad looked toward the production board. I found that before Christmas, he said. You waited a month. I wasn't ready. For what? He rubbed one thumb over a chip in the mug's glaze. When Ryan was young, I understood him, he said. He wanted people to like him. He wanted to be seen. That made sense to me. You wanted people to like you? I wanted them to know I mattered. The admission was so unexpected, I held still. Dad continued. A man starts something, he wants his son to carry it. Maybe that's vanity, maybe it's habit. I saw Ryan selling work, shaking hands, bringing in contracts, and I recognized it. You weren't a salesman. I sold every job myself in the beginning. You also installed them. I did everything. So did I. He nodded once. I know. The words sat between us. You didn't say that at the anniversary, I said. No, you said Ryan built the company. I was wrong. Dad did not say those words often. The last time I remembered was after he installed a bathroom door that opened into a toilet. Wrong how? I asked. His jaw tightened. I waited. He glanced at the old board. You made the company run before it was large enough to have systems. Then you made systems nobody noticed because they worked. That sounds like Ryan's staff speech. He was right. You were there? I worked there. You didn't come into my office. I didn't know what to say. You could have started with this. I'm starting now. I wrapped both hands around my coffee. Dad looked down. I called Ryan the builder because it made the story simple, he said. I started it. My son grew it. People understand that. And me? You complicated it. By existing, by being better at parts of it than I was. His voice had gone quiet. I looked at him. He kept his eyes on the table. You could see the whole company, he said. I could see the next job. Ryan could see the next client. You could walk through the shop and know what would go wrong 3 weeks later. Not always. Enough. Why was that a problem? Because I was supposed to teach you. You did. Then you passed me. There it was. Not an apology. Something less polished and more expensive. Dad leaned back. I knew if I called Ryan the future, he'd stay close. He likes being wanted. You never seemed to need that. I did. I know now. You knew then. He looked at me. You just decided I could survive without it, I said. Yes. The honesty hurt, but it did not confuse me. Dad's fingers tightened around the mug. "I thought strength meant you didn't need protecting," he said. "You used my strength to protect everyone else." "Yes. And when I stopped, you called me disloyal." He looked toward the window. "Yes. I let the silence remain. I did not rescue him from it. Finally, he said, 'I'm sorry.' The apology was plain. No explanation attached. No request that I admit my mistakes in the same breath. I believed him. That did not make everything disappear. 'Thank you,' I said. He nodded. 'You can take the board back,' I added. His head snapped toward me. 'It's yours. It's enormous. You have a wall.' 'I don't want my apartment to look like a production meeting. It's history.' 'I wanted you to tell the truth, Dad. I don't need a shrine to exhaustion.' He looked offended on behalf of the board. 'I cleaned it. I can smell the solvent from here. You could hang it in your office. I work at client sites. You should get an office.' 'I don't want one. That's impractical. You've been here 14 minutes and we're already redesigning my business.' Dad caught himself. His mouth moved, then closed. 'Right,' he said. I smiled. He did too, reluctantly. 'What do you want me to do with it?' he asked. 'Leave it for now.' That's what I said. 'No, you said it belonged to me. I'm saying I haven't decided.' Dad considered the distinction. 'All right.' He reached for his coat. 'Are you leaving?' I said what I came to say. 'You can finish your coffee.' He looked at the mug, then sat back down. We talked for another 40 minutes. Not about Bennett. Dad complained about the neighbor who parked too close to his mailbox. I told him about the metal fabrication cousins and their war over aisle markings. He asked whether I was eating properly. I asked whether he had replaced the cracked ladder Mom kept using in the garage. When he left, he did not ask when I was coming to the shop. At the door, he paused. 'Your mother wants dinner Sunday.' 'Will we talk about the company?' 'No, can you do that?' 'No idea.' I laughed. 'I'll come.' Dad nodded and walked down the hallway. The production board remained against my wall for 3 weeks. Eventually, I hung it in the small rented office I claimed I did not need. I mounted the Thanksgiving photograph beside it, including Luis's handwritten line. Not because suffering proved I deserved anything, because those people had been there. Dad and I rebuilt slowly, without naming the process. He began calling on Wednesday evenings. Sometimes he asked about work, caught himself, and changed the subject so abruptly that conversations sounded edited. "How's the packaging company? Actually, forget that. Have you seen what they're charging for tomatoes?" At Sunday dinners, Mom still asked me to carry serving dishes, but she also asked Ryan. Dad stopped leaving company papers on the sideboard. When he and Ryan argued, neither called me to decide who was right. The first time Dad invited me to lunch, he gave me a date, time, and restaurant, with no explanation. "What's this about?" I asked. "Lunch. Why?" "People eat it. We ate sandwiches. Nothing broke." Ryan's first year as president was not graceful. He lost a long-time client after refusing an impossible schedule. He hired a project manager Dad disliked and promoted a woman from estimating whom Dad had called not ready for 3 years. He made mistakes that belonged entirely to him, and some decisions I would not have made. He also stopped promising that everything would work out. He told clients what things cost. He told employees when business was uncertain. He told Dad no. Not often enough, according to Thomas. Too often, according to Dad. Bennett reached its 500th healthcare project 11 months after the anniversary. It was a renovation for a rehabilitation hospital in Springfield. Not the largest contract we had ever completed, but Ryan decided 500 deserved lunch. He called me himself. Loading dock. Friday at noon. Am I consulting? No. Speaking? No. Carrying anything? No. What am I doing? Eating a sandwich. Is this one of Dad's lunches where food is a cover story? You're a guest, Claire. I arrived at 12:10 on purpose. The loading dock doors were raised to a clear September afternoon. Folding tables stood between 2 parked trucks. There were submarine sandwiches, potato salad, canned soda, and a sheet cake with a blue 500 large enough to alarm diabetics. The old shop sign hung from the railing. No stage, no film, no centerpieces. Luis sat with Marlene, Denny, and Calvin at a table near the cake. Calvin's oxygen machine rested beneath his chair, and Denny's hearing aid was already turned off. Marlene waved me over. "We saved you a seat," she said. "Why?" "Because Luis was putting his hat there. It's an important hat," Luis said. I sat. Across the dock, Dad stood with the current employees. He saw me and lifted one hand. I lifted mine back. Ryan climbed onto the same low platform he had used on my final day. He thanked the Springfield crew, production, purchasing, estimating, and installation. He named the project managers who had completed the last 100 healthcare jobs. Then he looked toward me. "Before Bennett had a system, it had Claire," he said. "She built the way this company works. We're still using what she taught us, and we're still improving what she should never have had to carry alone." Dad began clapping first. Not dramatically. He did not stand. He simply brought his hands together and kept going until the rest of the dock joined him. I looked down at the table. Luis nudged my foot. "Take it," he said. "Applause doesn't make you responsible for cleanup." After the speeches, Ryan cut the cake badly. Pieces came out in collapsing blue slabs. Mom would have taken the knife from him. I stayed seated. Thomas approached with frosting on his sleeve. "We're short on forks," he said. "That sounds serious. What should we do? Use your leadership." He grinned and walked away. Nobody brought me a schedule. Nobody asked me to approve a decision. When a soda cooler leaked across the concrete, 3 people found towels without looking in my direction. Dad carried me a plate with a corner piece of cake. "You like extra frosting," he said. "I do." Then he went back to help Ryan cut the rest. I ate beside the old team while they argued about whether the 500th project was actually number 499. Denny accused accounting. Calvin blamed a job from 1996. Marlene told both of them they were idiots. They teased me. They corrected my memories. Luis moved his important hat so I could set down my plate, and for the first time, the place they saved for me did not come with anything I had to carry.